Some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Board Games Unlocked, and Ethan and I are doing a Root faction tier list. If you have not seen our 6 Siege ranking video, this is Ethan. We are doing a collab. Ethan, why don't you go ahead and tell them what you do for a living?
Well, if you haven't seen the last couple videos, then basically what I would say is I mostly make videos on Six Siege, the board game, and sometimes a couple other games. I would love to do stuff on Root, but unfortunately, I'm just not good enough at it to think that any strategy guide I could make would be as good as some of the things that other people are doing online. So that's why I have not really made. I don't make. I try to make strategy guides for games, but I haven't done Root because other people are better at it than me. So that's pretty much what I do.
Nice.
Mhm.
So I have actually already done a tier list, not a tier list, a ranking list of the Root factions. However, as noted on that video, there were 2 new released factions that we were not able to rank. And a tier list is a little bit different than ranking 10 through 1, I
Mhm.
think. Um, so Ethan and I are going to go over that, but we're mainly going to go off of his list. So where
Yeah.
he has decided to place them. Going to banter back and forth. I have the screenshots of the factions so we can talk about. And I have the cards that pertain to the factions that have them.
Mhm.
And if you're not familiar, Root is an asymmetric war game set in this very cute woodland theme done by Leader Games. It is very obviously their best game that they've ever made. Uh,
Oh, interesting.
it come on, hold
I
on, let's like let's
I
let's
mean
let's
maybe
squash
I
this
would admit to
immediately.
you that maybe it's better, but I'm partial to Oath
Yeah,
myself.
you and the 6 people who still play that game.
I think Oath is incredible.
So, uh, Root had 30 overall. Um, I don't even know where Oaths.
It's
Oh,
probably lower for sure. It's more niche.
yeah, 306. So, but what's also interesting about this, now this is clearly, I mean, who actually gives a shit, but it is always interesting. That's like, oh, 7.8, that's not far from 8.1. But then you look at, okay, 7K ratings compared to Root's 50.
50K.
So it's
Yeah,
like,
well, and the other thing about with Root now is Root has broken into true mainstream because this is
hmm
you will now find this at Target and Walmart,
yeah,
which I mean, if we're just talking about blanket success, obviously Root is more successful than Oath for sure.
yeah.
But
They're also not really comparable.
yeah.
You can compare Root more closely to Vast, I
Hmm.
think. But I don't like Vast. Um,
Yeah, actually, that's the one I haven't gotten to play yet. So I
there's
actually,
2. There's like the Manor one, which I think
mhm.
is supposed to be better. Um, but anyway, Root has become a game that it was in my top 10 for years and then eventually fell out this past year because I've gotten to a point where I want to play with people who have played it.
Mhm.
I don't want to teach it anymore.
Yeah,
So,
I actually just taught it last week to some new people. So, and they got into it, and that was fun. That was the first time I had a successful time teaching Root. So that was
awesome.
nice.
That's
I
good.
actually would not be surprised if Arcs is a competitor for people's favorite leader game
Hmm.
once it comes out.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
I have that backed. I don't know anything about it.
That could be a tier list we can do when it comes out. We can tier rank the leaders and lore cards and also the fate plot lines when we get into the campaign expansion. But
Okay.
that's a video
Yeah,
months down the
that's a whole
road.
nother video. We're here to talk
Yeah.
about Root. And yeah, enough preamble. I think we can
Yeah.
go ahead and get started. So I have the
Mhm.
pictures pulled up ready. So Ethan, where would you like to start? Which faction you want to talk
So
about?
yeah, and just as like a disclaimer, kind of like with the Six Siege thing, Six Siege ranking, I'm kind of basing this off my own personal enjoyment and which ones I enjoy playing or don't enjoy playing. It's not me. I'm not trying to make a statement on I think this is objectively better or anything like that. So
Yeah,
these are the ones that suit my play style and
what
such.
yeah, no, that's actually a good disclaimer to make. I personally do not think any of these factions are bad. Um,
Hmm.
again, I think and yeah, so I like playing some more than others. And I like playing against some more than
Yep.
others.
Yep.
This one I feel like will be a lot more diversive in the placement than our Six Siege one was because there's less conditional stuff, I think. Like
Mhm.
it's not like in Six Siege we couldn't isolate one operator and be like this is inherently bad because
Yeah.
you pair them with four other operators
Yeah.
and the map matters. Here the map doesn't really matter.
Mhm.
And you are playing one faction.
Yeah. I would also, it'd be interesting. I would love to make a separate tier list. Maybe I will alongside this one because sometimes the gameplay I may not enjoy as much, but the lore of the faction is really cool, and so I'll still play them. I enjoy playing them just because of
Oh,
that.
oh yeah, because you have the RPG book.
Yeah, I'm a little bit more into the narrative of Root. I think maybe even than the gameplay. I don't, yeah, you get into the RPG and you realize, man, the lizard cult's like really interesting. But
Yeah, they are. Uh, and actually, this is already probably going to be obsolete because I
Mhm.
talked to Patrick at Gen Con last year, and I think
Leader,
they're, yep.
nice.
And I think they have two more expansions planned. Um,
Yeah, yeah. I think they either said it was two more, or they were thinking about doing one more big like expansion, like maybe like one
that
with
would
four
work too.
factions. Yeah.
But the designer of this game, what's his name?
Cole Worley.
Cole. Yeah. I think they were on a podcast talking about how it's getting increasingly more difficult to
Yeah.
design factions because you have to make them balanced.
I could see there being one more expansion, for sure.
Yeah, one
Um,
more expansion that brings in new factions, and then the second expansion as a storage solution.
yeah.
and
To be
and that'd
fair,
be
I
good.
don't know if it after the last expansion with the two new militant factions and the advanced setup, I actually think Root is pretty complete, but also I'd be
I
down
do
for two more
too.
factions. You know,
Yeah.
I'm not going to say no.
I think just 10 more. Round it out at 20.
That
uh
no, I couldn't do it.
no, I also I'd much prefer a storage solution at this point.
Same.
Um but all right, let's get started. So
Yep.
which one you want to talk about first?
Okay, so I went ahead and also ranked them from 1 to 10, and we can work from the bottom up and put them into the tier list. And this one is a pretty. I'm interested to see what you think. I would like to say that this is a faction that I've hated for years, and I have only just recently played them for the first time, and I have started to come around on them, but I have to be consistent with myself. And so I haven't played them enough to fully come around on them yet. And so D tier, I have labeled on my screen as the Lizard Cult tier because Lizard Cult is number 10 for me. It's going in there. And the reason is simple. Now, here's the board. I've got it right here. One, my first note is the Lizard Cult lore, awesome. Love it. No notes. They're one of the most fascinating. Like when you look at what they're doing, what their mechanics are implying, they're one of the most fascinating, easily for sure. The way they use, the way they sacrifice people in order to further their goals, in order to further the cult and create these acolytes, really cool. Love that stuff. The only thing is they're super hard to play for me anyway. I think they're one of the hardest factions to play, and I think that's not too controversial of a statement. I think most people agree the Lizard Cult is pretty challenging. With advanced setup, they got a little boost, which is nice, but they're still very difficult. A lot of things have to align, and there's almost a little element of luck involved with them as far as getting the lost soul pile to suit your needs. But secondly, the reason I've hated these guys, I've only played them 2 times myself. The reason I've hated them for years is because I've played against them for years, and the kind of factions I like to play, the Lizard Cult, just like screws with them
Just hard
in
counter.
such annoying ways, and it's so frustrating. So, like for instance, if I'm playing the Eerie dynasties and I think I've set up an impenetrable defense with a front line of birds that's protecting my clearings that I need for my decree, and the lizard cult can just randomly go, oh yeah, from across the map, that clearing's just gone now. It's just a garden, and you're like, wait, what? What? Why? Like for years that kind of thing annoyed me so much. So that's kind of why I have ranked them at the bottom. But I will say, to be fair, I'm coming around on them. After I played them for the first time, I realized, okay, I'm understanding them a little bit more, but still.
hmm hmm
So if
I've
you
kept
ask me in a
quiet the
year, it
whole
might be
time
higher.
because they're S tier for me.
Oh,
The
you made your face, and I went, oh,
they
I think this
I
is
was like
controversial.
they are my favorite faction to play. Um, for all the reasons that you said. I mean,
Yeah.
if you've watched our Six Siege and looked at my rankings, I like the I like the weird factions where it's just like
Hmm.
you can just be fucky with a lot of people.
Yeah.
Um, the great thing about the Lizard Cult is they essentially benefit from being hurt. Like
Hmm.
whenever their warriors die, then it's like, oh, thanks, they're now martyrs or
Yep,
acolytes, I
they're
guess.
acolytes now. Yeah.
Um, so they now do conspiracies. Whenever people spend cards or discard cards, they go into your lost souls pile.
Hmm.
So people are just tiptoeing anytime the lizard cult is playing, and it's like, yeah,
It
thanks.
it's so annoying because like when you fight them, you know you're giving them acolytes, but if you
Yep.
just ignore them, they will actually run away. Like that's the thing. That's like you have
Hmm.
to have that middle line there. And they're one of those factions that it's always hard for me playing against them to know exactly what to do to hinder them. And I know people will say, "Well, just like influence the Lost Souls pile," but as somebody who's not playing the Lizard Cult that much, that doesn't really mean much to me. I don't know how I can just, normally I can't just choose to discard cards. I don't believe so. It's not like sometimes I don't have control over which suits are going in the pile. So
Um,
it's kind of difficult that way for me to try
yeah,
and hinder them.
that is kind of like the thing about Root that makes it so great
Hmm.
is every faction wins if they are left alone.
Yeah.
And I have played many, many games of Root where if you do not play the game with people who, uh, not necessarily enjoy confrontation, but don't shy away from it, then
Hmm.
it's like you're gonna have a good time. If
Yeah.
you have people who are like, well, I don't want to fight them, it's just like you are the only one who can deal with them right now.
Yeah.
If you do not, they are gonna get 15 points right now.
Hmm. I'd say the biggest bargaining chip for them, at least in the games where I've seen them win, is because people kind of agree that they're one of the harder factions to play. They're one of the weirder ones. That's one of your table talk chips that you have, is you can be like, "Hey guys, I'm just a wee little lizard cult. Like I'm playing such a hard faction. Don't beat me." And then that's how you kind of sneak under the radar, right?
Oh
And that's
yeah.
usually what happens when I've seen the games where the lizard cult
How
play.
many warriors do they have? I don't have the boards with me, but luckily you do.
Oh, they have 25. They have
So
a lot.
they have a really, really good amount that
Hmm.
they aren't ever going to be shy on warriors. So if they sit in their acolytes area, they're not going to be like starved for warriors.
Yeah.
And because of that, if they're playing with the Riverfolk, they
Hmm.
have the currency to actually benefit from that as well, unlike some
Yep.
other factions. So yeah, so if we take a look at their board, like their top effects, the revenge, you're removed, defending warriors become acolytes. So
Hmm.
okay, you attacked me, they now become acolytes. Hatred of birds, bird cards are not wild for your rituals.
No, instead you
Um,
kill birds and force them into the cult as acolytes.
I guess that makes sense.
You sacrifice them on the altar.
That's amazing. And then pilgrims, you rule any clearings where you have any gardens, which
I
is
hate
again
that. Oh, I
fantastic.
hate it
Just
so
having a
much.
garden there is like,
Hmm.
I wish it wasn't gardens though. I wish it was. I wish it was actually. I get why because they didn't want to make it like religious.
Hmm.
Like, hey, instead
Well,
of gardens, it's a church.
I
What
mean, they're
church?
pretty religious. You read the section on them in the book, and they worship the great dragon. They have a section on their doctrines that they teach.
No,
So
I know the aspect of a cult
yeah,
inherently implies religion, but I think by actively, if they said church, I
yeah,
feel
that
like
would be a
it might
little it's step
piss
on
some people
toes.
off. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair.
Um, but yeah, like the fact that they reveal any number, and the fantastic thing about them is it's reveal.
Hmm.
It is not spend. So they
Correct.
can just acquire cards and just like, yep, I have these. If you have no way of destroying their hand, then they just constantly keep revealing it to build, to
Hmm.
place gardens in the matching clearing, to recruit more warriors, to score points just based. So like if they have um like four mouse gardens out every daylight, if they just reveal a mouse card, it's like 3 points, three
Yep.
points. And then the wild that allows them to place just sacrifice someone. If someone's not killing them, then they can acquire bird cards
Hmm.
and just place them in their acolytes.
Yeah,
Uh,
to me, they're more fun to play than to play against. If I'm playing against them, I'm almost always frustrated because they're one of those that just like with the
yeah,
gardens
I
and
guess it
the
is
way
true.
they just like infest parts of the map that you just can't break into, it can be very frustrating to play against for me. And that's
Yeah,
kind
I
of why
guess
they're low.
I've never played against them. Like
Really.
I've always played them because again,
Hmm.
they when you read them, it's like, well, what do I do? Like,
Yeah.
and I know on the back of these they explain how like how you should play them.
Hmm.
Um, One thing about Root that was always kind of shitty is with every expansion that they made. So the core game came with like these cards that you passed out to all other players that
Yeah.
told you what that faction did, like a quick aid. They didn't do that with any of the other expansions. So,
Hmm.
which I'm sure somewhere maybe online has those, but yeah, they're not limited on crafting items, so they can craft. Um, so to me, I do not see um a downside. Like I just don't like.
Yeah, one of my friends loves the Lizard Cult because he feels that they're one of the few factions that have they in their opinion playing them feels like they can never get taken out of the game entirely. They're always playing, is what they've said.
Yeah,
So yeah, and I get that. Like genuinely, like now that I played them, I think they're much more fun to be the one playing them. But playing against them is just a very frustrating experience. And I know probably that just means that I don't know enough about how they work, which is
yeah, because
fair. It's
there
totally fair.
usually is, and whenever we talk about the other factions, yeah, there's usually always something to be done to hinder a faction.
Yeah. Well, whenever I talk to my friends who play them, I'm like, what should I do? And literally what they usually tell me is, well, you should
Join the
influence,
cult.
join the cult.
Join the
Yes,
cult.
I'll happily, but they'll be like, well, just influence the discard cards so I can't affect the clearings that you want. And I find that very difficult to do because it forces me to like, okay, I have to play some optimally so I can discard this red card on the chance that it might actually still be the hated outcast. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
it's annoying.
because
And
they
then
have
like when you
no
battle them,
way.
the gardens can just like screw with you if you don't destroy the gardens. Like that can really screw with a lot of factions. Their conspiracy actions can just affect things from across the map. They can just do things like
I mean, gardens, yeah, destroying the gardens, which again is not necessarily hard
yeah.
to do. Uh that's I mean, that makes them discard a random card from their hand.
Hmm.
Um so that's there. Yeah, the outcasts, which is directly tied to their lost souls, is
Yeah.
where they can do their conspiracies,
Yep.
so they can crusade two acolytes in battle to any outcast clearing or move from them. So that's kind of how they can fight. Otherwise, they just can't fight.
Hmm.
So they are very limited on what the outcasts are. But every time I've played them, I've never really looked at my Lost Souls pile and was like, oh man, I can't do anything.
Yeah.
It
No,
was
but
like, oh, okay, I guess it's
yeah, for
Fox
sure.
this time.
Again, that's why what I'm talking about is playing against it, right? Like
Yeah,
countering them is harder and it's a little bit more nebulous on what you can do and how you can affect them. And especially if you're playing them well, you're probably turtled up in 2 to 3 clearings. So even just fighting them is you have to commit tons of resources to clear out an entire lizard cult clearing.
yeah,
And then
yeah,
of course the bad thing is you kill a bunch of them. Well, you've just given them a bunch of acolytes
right.
so they can retaliate.
Yeah,
So you know what I mean? Like
yeah.
I find them fun to play. They're fun chat. And that's the thing is they do all this, but they also still are one of the hardest ones to play, the hardest ones to win with. So it's funny. It feels like well, if I can't win, you can't win either, or you're gonna have a really hard time. You know what I
Very
mean?
thematic for a
Again,
cult.
now that I've played them twice, they were fun to play, but every time I play against them, it's like I have this feeling like, oh, okay, it's a lizard cult game. Like I have to rethink how I have
Yeah.
to play this, which is
Which
you
again,
know
Root is a
it's what it
war
should
game.
be. But it's one of those
It's
where I'm like, oh, I don't like playing them this way, if that makes
yeah.
sense.
No, I mean, yeah, this is based off of enjoyment. I just think it's
Yeah.
very funny that the very first faction, it's just like DS.
Yeah. Hey man,
Um,
that's a beauty of Root.
right. So I got S tier for Lizard Cult. They were my number one when I did the ranking last
Mhm.
time. Um, So, yeah. But oh yeah, so again, one last note about this and just about Root in general
Yeah.
is that it's a war game, so negotiations should happen. If the lizard cult's running away and one person can't deal with it, then the other people should be helping.
Hmm.
Because if it's like, okay, well, either we all lose, and it's not king making, it's kind of like what Oath should be as well, where it's like, okay, we all need to kind of ally temporarily,
Yeah.
otherwise we just are letting him win.
Hmm.
Um, which is actually why, yeah. So yep. So Lizard Cult
Yeah.
is your D.
I think they're one of the easier ones to have a table talk presence because, like I said, like the way that I've seen them win is they get to do that thing where they're like, guys, I'm just the wee little lizard cult. My win rate is bad. Like I'm so hard. And that lets them kind of do their own thing for too long. And then they start to run away. People are like, oh, wait a minute, we didn't actually like stop them. So
There's a faction. Well, yeah, there's a faction I think that does that better. Um, but there's a lot more
mhm,
data that I think applies to the one I'm
yeah.
thinking of.
Again, like I
So
said, I'm coming around on this one, playing it anyway. Um, like I refused to play it for years because it frustrated me so much. But I think just for the sake of consistency, I haven't played it enough to really get to that point where I could put it higher. So, and I think it'll just my friend Jack who loves this game. It's his favorite faction too. So it's
nice.
more like a meme against him. Like screw you, Blizzard Cult is D. It's its own
Yeah,
category.
you've implemented your own Six Siege ban
Exactly.
session where it's like, okay, we each get to ban a faction. Lizard
Yeah,
Cult.
Lizard Cult. Yeah.
All right, what's next?
Okay, so number 9, and this is one that I think is a totally fun faction. I actually just don't think I've played it. I think I've maybe played it once, and it's usually because usually my other either not in the game. When they're in the game, I have some friends who just really like playing them. So I haven't gotten to play them a bunch, but I think they're a fun
Hmm.
faction. But because of that, they're number 9, and that's going to be the Corvid Conspiracy. So I'd put them in the C tier
Ooh,
for myself. I think they're a good faction. I think they're a fun
Corvid and
faction.
C.
hmm
Okay.
They're good. They're good. They're fun. I really like their mechanics. And from what I can tell, they seem to be another one that's pretty difficult to win with because they're a very puzzly faction. You have to be very precise with
Yeah.
them. But the little guessing game they get to do with their plot tokens, I think is super fun. It changes the game, and I like the little when you get that moment where you predict the plots that's your friend has placed down, and you get to remove them. So much fun. When you're playing them, again, I think I've only played them one time, but I like playing mind games with people. Like, when we talk with Six Siege, we talk about the decoy tokens.
Hmm.
The Corvid get these like four kinds of tokens that they can put face down, and they could be anything. And the mind games you can play with people to get them to lose cards as they try to guess what plot you place down, I think is so much fun.
Yeah,
Um,
I remember years ago at Gen Con, they were demoing this faction. This and the one that came with it, which was the
the
Duchy.
Duchy. Yep.
Um, and I remember playing some of these like abilities or kind of how that they can jump into the board and stuff. And after having played Root, I was like, that's busted. Like
Yeah.
this faction is busted. Clearly they're not. They're all busted in
Yeah.
their own way. But I do agree with you. I think Corvid, um, I've never seen Corvid win, but I've always seen them be in the game.
Yeah.
Like they're always there. They're always like you said, they're always playing.
hmm
Uh, and like there are times when you can play Root where sometimes a faction is just like not it's just not going their way.
Yeah.
Corvid's just always kind of like a pain in the ass when you're playing.
Yeah. It from what I can tell, because I've seen my friend play it a lot. So I have experience from seeing it in the game all the time. It is a very precise faction. Like you have to be very precise and you have to get your timing down perfectly in order to score. And when you can get that timing down, they can take off. Like I've seen it happen.
Yeah.
But something I think just psychologically, when those plot tokens go down, I think it just naturally freaks people out. And it kind of like it's just natural for people to see and be like, we should just attack that and get it off the board, which is what's
Yeah.
going to cause you to lose points as them, right? Like you're not going to be able to score unless you have revealed plots and then you reveal more plots later, which is why they have
Hmm.
to be so precise. The other thing
Yeah.
about them is I've seen this faction's turn take the longest. Like the amount of time my friends
Yeah.
have spent trying to like perfectly math out how they want to place the tokens and what to place down. So these can kind of take up a lot of time,
Yeah.
which is another reason I
And
placed
you're
them
limited
lower.
on those plot tokens though. I think it's
Yeah.
3 each.
I think it might be
Um,
4 each, if I'm not mistaken.
on the back of the board, it might say how many.
There's 8 plots, there's 2 each.
2 each. Okay.
Yep.
Um, so yeah, so you're very, very limited on what you can do. So
hmm
I feel like the plot tokens, some are better than others. They're very situational.
Yeah.
And whenever your situation doesn't really call for almost any of them, it's just kind of like, okay, what do I do?
Yeah.
Uh, and the fact that you have to, in Birdsong, you flip plot tokens, and then uh, 2 of them have when flipped effects,
hmm
uh, and then they just kind of stay there.
Yep.
So it's like you're almost preemptively getting points. Like, so you only get points whenever for each flip. You score one for
hmm
each face up plot on the map, and then that's it. So I feel like they could be really slow going, and the fact that players have a chance to guess what it is,
hmm
and if they get it right, it's just gone.
Yeah. And
So,
that player gets a point then if they remove it too as well.
right.
So yeah.
Yeah. So it's like that can be really frustrating as the
hmm
Corvid. If I mean, if you just guess it, like where it's like sometimes it's like, okay, I think that's a bomb, but that's so obvious. Extortion. And
Yeah.
it's right. And it's like, why would you guess that? It's like, I
Yeah.
don't know.
Generally, I think what's interesting about the floor plot tokens is that often I found when trying to guess something, when I look at it, usually I'm like, okay, that could definitely be like two or three of the possibilities. Like I could
Mm,
probably rule out one or two, but there's all it's rarely like, oh, that's definitely a raid, right? Because if you're thinking like that, then it's probably not that thing, which is why they're so much fun to try and guess. Like I said, they're a fun mini game, but they're hard to play. And they're again, like I know we could say if you let any faction win loose, they're gonna win. But the thing about the Corvids is, especially with their recruit, they're one of those that if you just kind of like don't do anything against them for a while, they will spread around the map
yes.
with these little clumps that is so annoying to deal
Yes.
with. So
That's what I think is a busted aspect about them is just they just spend
yeah.
any card and then just boom, 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 boom.
Yeah.
Um, and that's their best way because then whenever they go into daylight, that they have to now it gets more and more expensive to place tons of plots on
Yeah.
your turn. Um, but if they, I mean, how many warriors do they have?
They have 15.
15. So that's a pretty good amount that you could get like three three plot tokens
Hmm.
uh out on the board, and then they're just there to be dealt with. Because also they can place plot tokens just not in any contentious areas.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, they're face up now, so every round I'm gonna get a bunch of points. So now you have to go out of your way
Hmm.
to get rid of them. Otherwise, I'm just gonna get a bunch of points.
Yep. And
So
their ability where their face down tokens deal a hit is also another really good tool in their arsenal.
yeah, they're embedded agents. The Nimble is fantastic. Not
Hmm.
just you don't have to control it. Doesn't matter. You can just move.
Yep.
Um, And yeah, the exposure was anytime before drawing cards in the evening. Yeah, an enemy player in a clearing with a face down plot may show you a matching card to guess the type. If they're correct, they remove it. If incorrect, you say no, and then they get a card, which is good because
Hmm.
then that allows them to recruit more.
Yep.
Um, Weirdly enough, though, rules wise, they're actually really simple.
Hmm. Oh yeah. You place down face down tokens on your turn. Next turn, if you can flip tokens face up, you get points. And then the more face up tokens you have when you get a face up token, you get more points. So
Yeah, I
they're
mean,
another one of
Corvid's
those that
good.
you have to kind of use that loser cult tactic of guys. I'm just the you want to sneak under the radar. Guys,
I'm just
I'm so
Corvid.
hard. I'm just a wee
I'm
little
just I'm
Corvid. They're
ooh
so
woo.
hard. Ooh woo, please don't attack. I only have two tokens, guys. Come on. And
It's
that you
like
can get that pity move.
uh I mean, looking at the Corvid like stuff, they're actually not a horrible counter to the lizards because
No.
they have active ways of just extorting, or it's like I'm gonna
Yep.
keep placing my plots in your areas,
Mhm.
deal with them, or risk exposure.
Yep.
Um, and if you're wrong, then I get to take your cards, which limits what the lizard cult can do.
I think the
Um,
reason the lizard cult annoys me playing against them is because my friends are playing factions more like the Corvids, I find myself playing more militant factions, and the Lizard Cult is
mm,
such a thorn in their side.
yeah,
So that's kind of why they annoy me so much.
yeah.
But the
My
Corvids lore
mentality
as
when I'm
well, their criminal organization, like there's just a lot of cool stuff with them. I think their meeples look some of the coolest, personally. That dark purple color is really cool.
Oh, it's sexy. Yeah.
Yeah.
I do hate how they're not dual printed. How only
Yeah.
one side has the has like the design on it.
You get used to it, I think.
Yeah. But again, yeah, Corvid's fun. I personally would put them in B.
Yeah, I could see
Uh
that.
because again, they're always there. Like you
Yeah.
you kill all their units, they come back. It's like, okay, I'm gonna recruit. Now I at least get four immediately on the board. Um
Honestly, I think it's just because I played them less, but looking at it, I would probably swap my 8 and 9 and put Corvid at 8 because I think I would enjoy playing them more than my 8, to be honest.
okay.
So, I mean, we can get into that now if you want, unless you have more comments on the Corvid.
Yeah, no, I was gonna mention some of their like daylight stuff, like
Oh,
because we
yeah, go
didn't really
ahead.
talk about trick. That at least allows that gives them some flexibility if the
Hmm.
situation of where they place plots changes, and it's like, okay, I'm gonna swap these two.
Yeah.
Um, and you can just swap them just cause.
Hmm.
Like you could
Just to mess
swap
with
two
people.
bomb tokens, and then it's like, oh my God, what did they
The
do?
mind games. Yeah.
So that's why they're super fun. But yeah,
Like I said,
they're
like the mind game you can play with people is like the most fun part of them. That's why I love them as a concept, as a faction. Like playing
yeah.
against them, playing as them is a fun time, in my opinion.
I agree. I agree. So that's why
Until they
they're
do too many recruits, and then you're just like, how do they get all 15 warriors on the board? Like, how do I? And you're just like,
oh
how
my
am I supposed to
god.
kill these? Like, this is so annoying.
Yeah, then
Yeah.
they wiped them all and now all of their tokens are out. Okay.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Now you're number 8.
So I think this might be controversial. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what you say about this. Apparently, this is a faction that is very popular. A lot of people love. And according to my friend Jack, this is a faction you could give to a beginner to learn the game.
Well, Jack's favorite was the lizard cult, right?
Yes.
All
Yeah.
right. Well, he's right
So,
then. Whatever
yeah.
you're about to
Okay.
say
That's
is
fair.
correct.
I get that. Yeah. You guys might bond more on these factions then. In fact, I might swap this to be number 9 and Corvid go up. Because for whatever reason, I just do not like playing these guys. And that is the Underground Duchy.
Oh, okay.
The
So,
moles, I don't like them. I'm sorry.
okay. So, real quick. Funny enough that you say that because that you say Jack
Hmm.
says that you can give this to a beginner.
Yeah.
I do not agree
Yeah.
at all. He must have some,
Smart
high
friends.
IQ friends, yeah. But funny
Yeah.
enough, my friend, who loves Root, although he never
Hmm.
gets to play it, but the one time he got it, he got his girlfriend to play and a few other friends, and she doesn't really like to learn new games, so
Yeah.
he let her pick. Just, hey, here are all the factions, pick one. And
Yeah.
she picked the Underground Duchy. And when he told me that, I was like, why would you do that?
Hmm.
And
Absolutely wild to me.
so what happened is because she doesn't like to learn like new rules all the time, this is the only faction she plays. And she got good with them.
Interesting.
And it's like that's okay. Well, I
Yeah.
mean, I guess she liked playing them enough to keep playing Root, but and that's the really great thing about Root is you don't really get burned out on factions.
No.
Like a lot of games where it's like, oh, this character, I've already seen their special ability. They're so deep
Yeah.
as factions that it's like, yeah,
Each
there is a learning curve.
each faction has like 4 to 5 different potential strategies you can employ just within that faction. That's what's like
Yeah,
so fun about them. Yeah.
yeah. So while I do not agree that you can give this to a beginner, um I
This is
guess I'm wrong.
yeah. Look. I'm willing to admit that these are probably a good faction.
Oh yeah, they're A
Firstly,
tier.
I will say, absolutely not. You can't hand this to beginner. This is one of the most complex factions, in my opinion.
Yeah, I
There's so many
agree.
different moving pieces to this thing.
Hmm.
There's so many different, like, look at this. Like, you have to take 2 actions, but they give you 5 immediately, and then you have this whole extra deck of cards. And there's like, from what I could tell, there's like 8 different strategies on just the path you go down your minister tree. What? You'd give that to a beginner? Why? That's so ridiculous. There's 2
Yeah,
different kinds of buildings, and there's different types of strategies on which buildings you build, and that depends on which ministers you want to sway. Why would you give this to a beginner? That's crazy. It literally blows my mind. I'll fight with him to this day. Anyway,
yeah. No, I mean, okay. So he's technically not wrong. You can give
yeah.
this to a beginner. They are
Yes.
not winning.
No. And
They
like
they are not. They're probably not scoring points, but they can
I
play them.
I just think, look, I mean, sure, some people could begin with this, and I know you'll probably get like a commentary being like, "Well, I started with the Underground Duchy." Okay, whatever.
I've
Look,
never lost. I
you
get
have to
30 points
admit,
turn
if you
2.
compare the Underground Duchy to something like uh
The
the
cats.
Vagabond or the Cats, like the Vagabond's easy, like, oh, this boot item lets me move. Like that's so simple to get. Like people get
Right.
that, you know. The Cats are like, oh, like those are just easy. Like I just build buildings and get points. Like that's all you have to do. But like this,
Yeah.
there's like so many things you have to do, and you have to plan things from the beginning on how you
Yep.
want to play. I don't think this is a good for a beginner, but like
The
that's just me.
so I think this is a fantastic faction. Like I said, they're A
Mhm.
tier from. Oh yeah, where are you placing them? D.
So I'm putting him in C tier, but I'm putting him below Corvid Conspiracy. I
Okay.
just find them unfun to play, which is why I put them so low,
Yeah.
personally.
So to me, the Underground Duchy has so many avenues to victory that
Hmm.
they are always making big plays.
Yeah.
The fact that they have their side underground area where they just fill up with warriors and then they make tunnels and then it's just like boom, like here we are now, is huge.
Yeah.
However, because they make these big bombastic moves, and in my experience, they are also one of the easiest to shut down.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which is, I mean, like I said, I still think they're A tier, but they when they get a building removed, um,
Brutal.
it is rough,
The price of failure is punishing.
right? It's almost as punishing as another faction that we'll talk about at some point, but
Hmm.
but man, whenever so first of all, they get points based off of just placing out their squires, nobles, and lords.
Hmm.
Just because they can swarm the board, it's just like, oh, yep, I have 4 cards that match this clearing that my pieces are in. Let me get these lords out, and I have the
Yeah.
lords here. You have the Baron of Dirt that gives you a point per market on the map, um, and that's every round. So it's like if you're defending your markets, okay, that's 3 points. The Duchess of Mud, score +2 if all tunnels are on the map. I cannot remember how many tunnels they have.
3.
Yep, so that's 6 points. And then the Earl of Stone, +1 point per citadel on the map. And even if you get one round, let's just say you're really insanely good and you have 2 lords out. Now, well, not only are you getting 6 points for getting those lords out,
Hmm.
like you could swing another 6 points before they're killed. Oh,
Yeah.
that's destroyed. Now that lord's killed, and you can never bring him out again. That's also brutal. But you just scored 12 points.
Yeah.
Like,
Listen, I can't deny that they're a highly like aggressive militant faction, and they can make these huge plays and make these huge swings. They're good. Like I totally understand why someone put them in the A tier. For me, they're one of those high maintenance factions where they can do a lot, but you have to put so much brain power and effort into getting it to work. And my brain is small brain. Like I for whatever I've played, and I actually there was a while where I played these like 8 or 9 times in a row to try and figure them out. And for whatever reason, I just struggled to figure out the right path. And I know that I could look online and people would just tell me how I should play them. But
mm,
I don't want to do that. I want to figure them out myself. And I still
yeah,
haven't figured it out. Like, I know there are builds for the moles. Like, I know you can, there's like 5 different builds you can do as you go down like the squires and nobles and lords. Like, I get that. But nah, man, that's not for me. That's way too high maintenance. Root is already a high maintenance board game.
right.
And I don't want to deal with these. There's just a lot going on with them. And they're another one where there's a lot going on and you have to be precise. But at least with the Corvids, I just know, okay, I'm just putting down tokens and
Yeah.
flipping them up. Like I get that. With these ones, and it's been so long since I played them, I couldn't even tell you exactly what I find so high maintenance, but there's just way more. There's just way more to think
Well,
about
because
and to
yeah,
plan
because
out.
at any given time, you're not only are you thinking about your positioning on the map, you're
Hmm.
thinking about which cards you want to get. That you also have to manage your hand.
Yep.
Um, which we've just seen. I mean, just the Corvids and the Lizards alone fuck with people's hands.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, well that's annoying. But then, so like the Squires, the Formal, reveal a card to place a building in any clearing you rule.
Hmm.
Marshal, take a move. Captain, initiate a battle. That's all free stuff that
Yeah.
you can do. So you do your 2 actions that you're at least guaranteed to be like, okay, I don't have my Squire that lets me move. But if you do, then you can take a move action and get another move action.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, when you get their squires, nobles, and lords going, no, they're very good. And when you can get those buildings out and you can turtle up and actually defend them to where it's really hard to defeat them, yeah, they're tough. For me, I think I've just found I've never been able to get them going without being vulnerable first, and then I get hit with price of failure too early and I can never recover.
Yep. Yeah,
I've
which
seen
price
other
of failure?
people, I've seen people get around it. I'm just not good at it. I think, oh, I
Hmm.
need to get buildings out to get anything going. And I get out some buildings, and then people will be like, "Oh, well, we don't want the underground duchy to run away," and they'll punch me, and they'll get rid of my buildings, and I'm just screwed.
Yeah.
It's frustrating for me. I find them
Yeah.
frustrating to play.
For me, the Lords, every time I've played them, I don't utilize the Lords as like my guarantee way to get points.
Yeah,
Um, Nobles and Squires for me are kind of where it's at. And
the
then it's
extra
like, oh,
actions.
now I can get one Lord out, but
Hmm.
I'm expecting him to completely die. One
Yeah,
building and now price of failure, he's gone.
yeah. If you can get them set up properly, you've got this deal where you've got buildings and clearings, and you've got these massive clumps of moles, and people have to spend turns and turns to kill them, and you just throw them right back in the burrow, and then you
Yep.
throw them. So yeah,
Because how many
it's
do they have? 30?
20.
20? Okay. Not as much as I actually thought, but I didn't think it was actually 30. I thought it was like 25. Uh, but yeah, so I mean, they only have 2 passive abilities: the burrow, which is adjacent to each clearing with a tunnel, and then yeah, but price of failure. When any number of duchy buildings are removed, return your swayed minister of the highest rank to your unswayed ministers pile, remove its card from the game, and discard a random card. So it's a pretty brutal thing when it's just any building.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter
Oh,
how many. Doesn't matter if you have all your lords out. One market destroyed. Oh,
you're
that lord's
screwed.
gone.
Yeah, it's rough. And I would also like, if I'm being petty, I don't know the reason I don't like them. the color of their meeple, but ugly. I do not, that little cream flesh looking color, disgusting. You look at clumps of these on the board, they're such an eyesore. I hate
It's
looking
like,
at
who
them.
put
That's just me.
hemorrhoids on my board? Thank you.
Exactly. I do not like looking at them. But the burrow is cool. Like I like that mechanic. They're fun. I know people who really enjoy them. I am personally not one of them.
That's fair. Um, yeah, they to me, what's their complexity on the back?
Um,
I would assume high.
high in my opinion. Let's see. Where's complete? Moderate.
That's a fucking lie. It's not.
Yeah.
They're not. There's no way.
hmm I'm sure there's some people that the duchy just clicks for them and they totally understand that. For me, I think they're way too high maintenance. And I'm sure I could probably get better at them, but if I played them like 8 times in a row and did not enjoy it, I'm not gonna play them.
Yeah,
Like I
yeah,
know factions, I know I enjoy some of the other factions. I'll play
yeah.
those instead.
But it's funny enough, it's looking like the ones you like the least are the ones I like the most. Um,
Love
because
to see it.
yeah, so far, yeah, Lizard Cult for me is S tier, Duchy is A, and Corvid is B. So
hmm
I'm actually right down the list.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, they're and what's actually great about them, and we haven't really talked about it, but like their what was it called? Roost rating,
hmm
whatever, like their number, so you can have a balanced game.
Oh yeah, their
Um,
reach value.
reach value, thank you. Uh, I think they're number two. Are cats still number one in reach
Cats are
value?
probably still number one. Yeah, I think so.
So it's nice that there's another faction that you don't be like, oh man, the cats,
hmm
like you can actually have another faction in there, to meet that threshold.
Yeah. No,
So
they're
that's
good.
helpful.
They're a great militant faction to have for advanced setup when you need to throw in militant factions. I just don't enjoy playing them. They're one of those where if it's between playing a militant faction that's the duchy or playing an insurgent faction, I'm gonna probably pick the insurgent faction. I'd rather
Yeah.
be, one of the insurgents today.
I was just looking at the Lizard Cult again, and it's like,
Mhm.
hey, maybe if you don't like the Underground Duchy, play the Lizard Cult and just sanctify their markets. And it's like,
Dude,
oh, price
that's
of
what I'm saying,
failure.
man.
No,
It's
that
so
sucks.
crazy. Like you play those and the lizard cult will just be like, "How about no?" And you're
How
like,
about
"Why? Like
look,
why
look,
do you do this to me?"
you would just like us if you saw us from our
Well,
point of view.
and
Eventually, here are some
because
Nike sneakers
yeah,
for
because
all.
Root's a war game, right? So in your head, you could have this defensive line where people need to get, through this really good force that you've spent turns assembling to get to the buildings that are protected.
Yeah.
But then the lizard cult could be just like, I spend these two acolytes, that building's gone.
Yeah, but
And
what
you're
you
just
didn't
like,
realize is you had to kind of recruit a bunch of just scrubs
yeah,
out of nowhere,
yeah.
and you didn't realize you were actually recruiting cult members.
I look, I get it. It's just one of those, and I'm not against feel bad moments in board games, but it's a feel bad moment. That's all I'm saying.
All right, what's your number 7?
All right, I think this one we're starting to get into the B factions for me. We're getting into the solid ones. Now, if we were talking about sheer power level and win rate, this one would probably be S, easy. And for me, it's the Vagabond. Goes in B tier.
Vagabond. Yeah,
That's
let's
number
move.
6. Yeah,
Here we are.
the
Yep.
Vagabond is the most unique faction, not even a faction, character in the game because it's just a character. It's, I think it's a really fun way to play. I know they're very powerful. It's one of
Hmm.
those things where if the Vagabond's in the game, it's one of those, okay, we have to make sure the Vagabond doesn't run away with it. Now, since the Marauder expansion, that's actually not as big of a deal because there's advanced setup. So you're actually getting a random Vagabond that's being dealt out. So you might not get one of the scary Vagabonds. And two, you've got
Yeah.
the Lord of the Hundreds, which is kind of a Vagabond counter. So they're not, I don't think they're as powerful as they were. And also if you're playing casually, they're probably not going to be that bad. But
Correct.
yeah,
And we're
but
talking about one vagabond, right?
yeah.
We're not talking
Yeah,
about
one
with
vagabond, not two
two.
vagabonds. That's a whole different thing. For me, I don't know what it is. I know they're very powerful, but kind of like the Duchy, I just can't quite seem to play them as well as other people I know. For
Hmm.
instance, I know people say, oh, well, if I just get the Vagabond, it's just gonna be an easy win. Like it's just way easier to play them. I don't know. I struggle with them. Like I don't struggle with them, I think, as much as the Duchy. Like I said, I think they're a very easy concept. You get items, you use the item to do the action.
Yep.
That's pretty solid. Like that's very easy for me to understand. Obviously, it's when you start betraying factions and destroying their pieces, then you rack up points. That's when you want to be careful. No, I think they're perfectly solid. They're a solid faction for me. If they're a pick, and I'm later in the ad set round, I'd pick the Vagabond. I'd be cool with that. But they're not my first pick, which is why they go in B.
Yeah, Vagabond is the only faction that I have never personally played, but they are in every single game of Root that I have played.
Yeah.
So, um, so I don't know. Every game I've played, I know it could just be group, but the Vagabond is never in it for a win.
Really?
You know,
Okay. So your group is different than ours, obviously.
yeah, and I hear that all the time. Vagabond wins every game. It's just like, are you letting him? Like, I don't
Yeah.
understand because I have never had the Vagabond be like a runaway
hmm
um player. Uh,
Well,
and
it's
I
one of
mean,
those where people see One Piece, and when you're first starting, I think people are like, "Well, we'll just ignore it. They're doing its own thing."
yeah,
And then it can get to a point where when you realize it actually is a threat, you're like 6 turns deep, and they're too powerful to stop, just straight up.
yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, I guess we have to play out the last 3 turns where they just, we're just delaying the inevitable is what it feels like. But
Yeah, I mean, and the fact is, like, they can go out and they can try and actually find the items that they need,
mhm,
but those are few and far between. They're limited, as
yeah,
well as then they require other players to craft.
hmm
And if players don't want to craft, there's one faction specifically that doesn't want to craft.
yeah,
But then others are like, well, I don't really want to because if you do craft, then there's not like a negotiation thing.
yeah.
Like they're just like, oh,
The
thanks for trading with me.
Yeah, it's one of those things where we pretty much figured out if the vagabond's in the game, one of the hard counters is, well, okay, everybody just don't craft and let them
Hmm.
just stick. So they have to find the items in the ruins, and then they have to find the cards that where they can craft, which can be
Yeah,
harder for them to do, right? So that's a hard counter that slows them way down. The second one is to just attack them early on so they don't like run away. And it's kind of another feel bad thing because if you just attack the vagabond in the first round, you're like, okay, I spend my whole first turn in the forest. You have to do that to kind of like get the timing right, at least in our group, to
yeah.
slow them down. Um, so those are both good counters. But again, I think the reason people found Vagabond so powerful is there are some of the individual vagabonds that are very powerful
Oh,
and
the
have really good
100%.
abilities. And you
Yeah,
would always pick those. But now you have a random vagabond draw. So
yeah.
sometimes you're going to get a vagabond. It's like, oh, that's not a great vagabond. And so I think people are not going to be as aggressive against the vagabond going forward in the
Right.
future.
Like where is he? Where is he?
The Harrier and the Tinker.
Harrier moved to
Wait, is
any
it
clearing,
Harrier?
exhausting no boots.
I think it might be the Harrier, yeah.
There is the oh, where is he? Scorched Earth, the scoundrel. Place
Yeah.
this torch in your clearing, move all enemy pieces there. Pieces can no longer be placed in or moved into this clearing.
hmm
So they can just burn a whole section that's no longer used. The Arbiter, before rolling in battle, the defender may enlist the Arbiter if he is in the battle's clearing. The Arbiter scores 1 point and adds undamaged swords to the defender's maximum rolled hits. And that is the really cool thing about the Vagabond is they have characters
Yeah.
that they can play.
When
Um,
you're playing the root RPG, you're playing a vagabond. Like in the midst of all the other faction political turmoil, you are one of the and the way that they base the classes off of that deck of characters, by the way. So like,
oh, okay.
yeah, when you go through the classes, like for instance, here's the Harrier in the RPG. So
Oh,
you
nice.
play
Okay.
Harrier. Yeah, and they give you like kind of some moves and stats that you get from that vagabond. So I think they're the most unique, they're the most fun. They're one little character. So that's kind of novel. That's kind of fun.
It is very different, yeah. And
Yeah.
the thing is I've never seen anyone because Root's a war game. No one ever
Mhm.
goes for the quests.
Well, it's because they're kind of inefficient. Like there are other
They
better ways to get points as a vagabond.
Yeah, I mean, I get because you have to randomize the deck. So it's
hmm
like if like yeah, like guard duty. So if you have a torch and a sword, you can claim this and you pick a reward which lets you draw 2 cards or
Yeah.
gain a point for every mouse quest card.
hmm
Well, you have to hope you get multiples of those. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, it's exponential and it ramps up. So it's like, okay, that's 1 point. Now it's 2 points, 3 points, 4 points, 5 points. If you happen to get all of those, but that's 1, 3, 6, 10, 15 points. I mean, just if you happen to get all of the same quest color and complete it all, you
Yeah.
got half the required points.
So the reason they're very powerful is this bit right here, this hostile bit,
Yeah.
where
Hmm.
you can get a bunch of points by trading cards for items, right? That's great. Hey, look at that. We can get up to 2 points
Yeah.
for aid. Okay, but the thing is, after you do that a couple times, then you just got to betray them.
Yeah.
And now you get a point every time you remove an enemy piece.
Yep.
And that's how, once you have a couple swords, you're going to deal you're going to be able to get points really fast. And this is why the Vagabond is powerful. That's why
Couple
people like
swords
it.
or hell, the crossbow,
Yeah.
where it's like, oh, I'm just gonna shoot one of your
The
guys.
crossbow's like, I shoot one of the guys, I get a point. And you're like,
Mm-hmm.
dang, that's crazy. Like, this ability is so powerful. We've the community had to homebrew the rule where this scoring instead works like the despot leader for the Eerie, and that homebrew rule became so popular. It's basically kind of like, I'm pretty sure leader games themselves are like, yeah, you should use despot infamy, which is like a homebrew version of this to kind of like take it down just a little bit.
Oh, I don't know
And
what
like
that
that's
is.
how. So like when the despot, they get, if they remove any enemy buildings, they get 1 point, like one extra point.
Oh, okay.
It kind of like limits it to whereas hostile reads on the board, you get a point every time you remove a hostile piece,
Yeah,
which can
per
be a
piece. Yeah.
lot. So the despot thing basically just says if you remove enemy pieces, you get one extra point. This is why the Vagabond is so powerful, because
Right.
once they ally a little bit and then they get some swords and a crossbow, they just start racking up points every turn just
Yeah.
by battling. So if you homebrew in that despot infamy rule, they're a lot more manageable and they'll be a lot more even. They're a lot more fun. But again, we're talking about casually, probably like you said with your group, people probably aren't going to recognize how good that is.
I mean,
And
even if they do, it's like, okay, you got some points. Well, now I'm gonna wound you, and
yeah,
yeah, all that does is break their items. But it's like, okay, well now you can't do anything, and now you're
hmm,
taken out of a turn
yeah,
completely. They are the only faction that can actually ally, like in
hmm,
terms of like win conditions,
which is
where it's
interesting.
like, that is interesting because no one else can do that. They're kind of like the cosmic encounter thing, where it's like, oh, okay, I'm not doing well, but they are.
Hmm,
So I think you have to do it if you have at least 10 points.
yeah,
Then it's like, oh, okay, now if you win, I also win.
yeah. I think they're fun. They're solid, but they're not my first pick. I think they're like right there in the middle for me. But
Yeah,
if we're talking about sheer like win rate, at least in my group, and power rating, I mean, these would probably be S. Like this is just a very good faction.
I
But
think that's definitely the case for a lot of groups.
yeah.
I, I mean, I would probably put Vagabond. I don't know, they're not my favorite. I'd probably put them in
Mhm.
C. Like,
Yeah.
even though I haven't personally played them, I've seen them played so many times.
Mhm.
And again, they're always there, but yeah, I'm not as like enticed to be the Vagabond when some of the other factions I like a
Yeah.
lot more.
I think I just like moving around more than one piece personally, which is probably
Yeah.
why I don't vibe with them as much.
It's like, hey, here's a war game, but
Yeah.
you're the hero. It's like,
But they're
oh,
not fun to play. You know what I mean?
right.
Like so. And there's some people's favorite. Like I could give the Vagabond, I think that's a good beginner faction because it's like you just have to worry about this one piece. So
Hmm.
automatically it brings the complexity down, I think. I'm just worrying about this one piece. Okay, that makes sense to a beginner. And hey, like it kind of when you look at it, what the items do make sense. Oh, more money means more cards. More T means more actions. Is that what it is?
T repairs.
Yeah, T
Um,
refreshes
your
items.
number
Yeah.
of your actions are just based off your items.
Boots move, swords battle. I
Yeah.
use a torch to explore. This makes so much sense. Like it's just
Yep.
easy to be like, hey, you're these
Hammers
four
repair
items,
or
Hammy's repair.
craft.
Like I think that just makes sense. Now, yeah, there's a lot more complexity with like the outlining and stuff, but also I think for a new player, you show them that quest thing and they get it. I find these
Yeah.
two items, I go to this color. Like this is, I think, a great beginner faction in my
Yeah.
opinion.
No, I agree. I agree. I bet what was his name? Jack?
Yeah,
I bet he thinks they're like super hard. He's like, no, no, you don't give the vagabond. Like he thinks
yeah.
the duchy's good for
No,
beginners.
yeah, he loves the vagabond, but he's part of the we need to attack them on their first two turns and get them into the forest to like slow them down because they're very
Yeah.
powerful. Yeah, because we've just played them a lot, the vagabond a lot, so we know how powerful they can be.
Nope, that makes sense.
Mhm.
All right, you're number 6.
Yeah, so I guess this is technically exactly middle of the road. I only just barely put it above the vagabond in B tier, and that would be the Marquise de Cat. I know a lot of people put them lower because I think they're easy to play, but they're hard to win with. And that's why people kind of
Um,
score them lower. I think
yeah,
they're
I can't
solid.
remember where I would probably put, yeah, the cats in B as well.
Hmm.
These are the go-to faction for new players.
Yeah, yeah. These and the Vagabond, because typically if I'm playing with new players, I'm just playing with the base four, and it's one of
Hmm.
those two is what I'm going to hand to new players for sure. There's just something about like handing them to the new player and showing them that they start in every space on the board. People get excited about that. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Now it soon becomes a double-edged sword, but they don't know that yet.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was about to say. It's like that's the problem with them is they're public enemy number one
Yeah.
because they're
There's a
everywhere.
target on your back. Yeah, which is
Yeah,
funny because like they're everywhere, but they're kind of weak because they're everywhere, right? Like it's just
exactly.
amusing to me. Um, They're very solid. I enjoy playing with them. I enjoy playing against them. Now, I know if I'm playing with them, I'm probably not going to win, but that's okay. Like, I'm fine with that. They're a comfort faction, you know?
Hmm.
I enjoy them. They're nice and cozy. They got the nice orange meeples that look really cool. Their lore is really interesting. And they're just simple. You just play actions. You get you just play actions. You just play buildings. And you
Hmm.
get 3 actions. The actions are very simple. You get more actions if you have blue cards.
Yeah.
It's just so simple. And the buildings make sense. You need wood to play buildings. Sawmills get you wood. So you need more sawmills to build more buildings. You got workshops, which let you craft, and the recruiters, which let you recruit more troops. Like these buildings could be way more complicated than they are, but they're actually super simple.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, like they're just, I think they're just fun. Like even though they're harder to win with, because what'll happen is you'll start kind of early on. You're like, wow, I have all the space. Let me build all these buildings. And then what'll happen is you realize, wait, I'm way too spread out. And
Yep.
then the Eerie starts to encroach on your space. And suddenly you're like, okay, wait a minute. Actually, like I'm actually not in a great position. And now I'm easy to fight off because I'm so spread out.
Yep.
So what I found is the Marquis is what I'll do is on my first turn, I will just, what's the word? Consolidate troops. I'll spend my first couple
Hmm.
turns just pulling things back and just reserving like a little corner for myself to start out. If you just start building buildings with just one cat, don't do that. You're going to
Hmm.
lose them way too fast.
Oh yeah.
So I
All you're
pull my
doing
dudes
is
back,
wasting
I
your
pair them
time.
up. Yeah. So and what happens is you'll have a really big early burst and you will plateau in the middle of the game.
Yeah.
And securing those first 15 points, you might find really easy. It's getting those last 15 points that's going to prove very difficult for
Yep.
you. So,
No, I agree. Yeah, I definitely put them in B tier. They're pretty solid overall. I think in my actual ranking
mhm.
of the 8, they might have been like, yeah, probably around here, 6 or 7. Um, I find them boring just
Yeah, I get that.
because uh I mean, just because all the other factions that have come out have just been a lot more exciting.
Mhm.
But and I also don't like to start the game being attacked by every faction where
Yeah.
it's like, great, like you guys can fight each other. It's like, yeah, but you're here.
That said, their field hospitals ability is very fun, especially when you get into it with the other militant factions. That could be a really annoying thing to be like, oh, you just killed 5 of my warriors. I plop them back down into the corner. I really
Yes.
like that ability. I
Yep.
think that helps them go a long way, in my opinion.
Yeah,
Now,
it's like,
if you
oh,
don't have those cards, that's annoying.
that yeah, it's like, but I mean, with recruits, like that can give you more card draws, so you have more
Hmm.
chances of being able to be like, okay, I'm just gonna spend this fox to place all these 5 warriors back, so I don't have to spend time putting them back out
Yeah.
on the board. And then of course the lizard cult's like, oh, thanks for that fox fox card.
Hmm.
I'm gonna tie everything back to the lizard cult, and why they're S tier. But also they're the only faction that can basically just hold one spot
Hmm.
with their keep. It's like, nope,
Yeah.
just here.
What's
Um,
interesting, I even think is like the keep is good, but it's not like great. Like I think early games, I thought the keep is more important than it really is. Like, yeah, field hospitals is nice and all, but
mhm.
like I've noticed people be like, well, we have to like newer players will be like, well, we have to take out the keep. And honestly, you kind of like don't. Like you only get 1 point off of it. You're taking away that field hospital's ability, but that's not. I don't think like it's great, but is it that important? You have to invest because you have to take a lot of resources to take out the keep typically with the
Yeah.
field hospital's ability. Yeah, like the keep is a nice little tool the Marquis has, but it's not like some all powerful thing that I think new players think it is. I
I
don't
think
know
it
if you had
depends
experience with
on,
that. Like people
yeah.
immediately, like the Eerie players, like, oh, I guess I should attack the keep, and you're like, not really. You don't have to.
I mean, it depends on how aggressive the cats want to be. They're kind of like the duchy, yeah, except
Hmm.
a watered down version in the sense they could go crafting. They could be highly aggressive if they
Yeah,
if they build that way. They start off really spread out, but they can swarm a lot. How many warriors do they have?
25.
Yeah. So they
Well, and
that's I
their
think
move
that's
ability lets them take 2 moves, which is great. Awesome.
exactly.
Underrated ability.
So they benefit from just having cards in terms of
Hmm.
like, well, they don't have to use them for really any specific purpose. They just have them. It's like, oh, I think I'll craft this.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, being able to control clearing. So I think actually taking out the keep is pretty detrimental if they're wanting to fight. And even if
Yeah.
they're not wanting to fight, you can take them out by being like, okay, now I'm going to attack you, and I don't have
Hmm.
to worry about you bringing them back, or
Losing
having
field
keeping them on the
hospitals
board.
would slow them down for sure. But yeah, it's not like the be all end all. I think what you said is a nice thing. It's a little incentive where the Marquis could probably keep one corner for a little longer than
Yeah,
other
I
characters
wouldn't
could
say go
probably,
out
which
of
is
my
good.
way. Like I
Yeah.
wouldn't be like, this is my entire strategy is to take out the
Well,
keep. But if you're near there,
Yeah.
which for the most part, wherever the keep is at, it's probably where most of the warriors are going to be.
Hmm.
So if you're,
Well, the biggest thing about the keep is that people can't place pieces in there while
yeah,
the keep is there, which is great, right?
yeah.
Lizard cult can't mess with the keep. We love that. Yes, thank you. Um, so I mean, it is a good piece, but probably leave that one clearing. That's kind of like a bargaining chip I use. Like, guys, come on, just let me keep, ooh woo, let me keep my keep. Like, I'm Marquis are so hard.
Oh,
Come
I'm
on,
so
guys.
sorry.
Yeah. Now
Who are
there's
you
I
playing
will
with?
say
Are you playing with like cat-eared, foxtail butt plug people that just
no,
do that the
no.
whole game?
I mean, I listen.
Two
I think pity is a perfectly legitimate weapon to use in a game,
two and
right?
a
If you
half
can,
hours in,
yeah,
Ethan, stop.
yeah.
Ooh, I'm just so. It's like it's just I can't. I have a
Look,
headache.
you can't ask my friends. Like, I don't. I do
Ooh,
whine sometimes, but I do be like, guys, come on. Like, I'm a hard faction, y'all. Why are
what?
y'all ganging up on me?
What
Come on,
just?
guys.
I'm just
Um,
boo boo. It's
I
like
will
you
say
are
one.
32 years old. No, I
I
actually don't know
know
how old you are, but
one really bad thing about the cats is that when you get blue cards, it's great. You can do 4 to 5 actions on your turn. Awesome. You can go whole games without drawing blue cards, and you start to realize how limiting the 3 actions is really quick.
yeah, yep.
Like the games, and that's like just luck, straight up. Like if you just happen to get in a game where you're drawing a bunch of blue cards, dude, you're in a great spot. Actually, you can do
Hmm.
so much with the marquee if you have blue cards. But I've played a couple games where I don't draw a single bird card, and they are so slow in this case.
Yeah.
So, and there's really no control over that part, which is why they're under B tier instead of higher
Yeah,
up.
I do think though with the buildings that even if they're destroyed, they're so easy to get back out
Yeah.
that it's just like, oh, you destroyed my building, like my 2 wood sawmill.
Mhm.
Okay, I'm gonna build it again. Hey, 2 points again.
Yeah.
Like,
The other thing is you have to worry about, and it doesn't say it. I don't know if it says it on the board. Let me. But well, it kind of does. You have to worry about your supply lines, which is kind of an annoying thing that you don't think about until it affects you. You're
yeah,
like, cool, I have this huge supply of wood. I'll be able to build my 4 cost building. And then somebody attacks a clearing in between your wood clearing and where you want to build, and suddenly you just can't use that wood. That's
yeah,
really annoying, I will say.
that
A
is
lot of
true.
people, a lot of people don't think about that, but it's one of
And
those
as
things that
far as
will
I'm
affect you.
aware, the wood is a piece that if it's
Yep.
destroyed gets a point.
So you can potentially, if you want to save wood to build higher buildings, but if people attack that pile of wood, that's like 3 to 4 points, and you're like, oh, what have I
Yeah.
done?
So I've never been in a situation where I'm building the 4 wood stuff. Um,
I don't think I have
it's
either.
I don't think that like if looking at the board, it's like maybe that those should have been 6 points.
The
Um,
moment players see 2 or more wood in a clearing, they get hungry. Like if you don't spend that sucker right now, you're like, well, I want to save it for a 3 cost building. Don't do it. They
yeah,
will attack that to get those points. They are
it's
ravenous.
it's the scythe mentality where it's like, okay, you have like 1 resource over there. Oh, I see you
Oh,
have 4. Well, I
well,
wasn't planning on fighting you, but now.
especially if it's a clearing also with buildings, there could
Hmm.
be 5 to 6 points just sitting in a
Oh,
clearing
what
with two
is
to three
that? Is
cats.
that a Corvid plot token? I wonder if that's just a bomb,
Oh, yeah.
and I can't do anything about it. Because now it's their turn, and they flip it, and it's a bomb.
hmm No, I think they're fun, and the Marquis faction is like the faction I think of when I think of Root. They're like, in my opinion, the
Yeah,
cover faction, like that cat right there in the board. That's what I think of when I think of
yeah,
Root.
the shell
But
shocked cat.
yeah, the Marquise.
Hmm.
Yep.
Yeah,
So
I do agree. I think they are hard to win with, but they're simple, so they get bonus points for actually being a faction that's understandable versus some of
also
these other ones.
canonically in the lore, they have French accents. That's cool. We like that.
Well, that would make sense.
Hmm.
Marquis de Cat. It'd be
Yep.
weird if
They're
it's like, you know
French.
what's weird? They're actually Swedish.
They're
It's
French
like,
cats.
huh.
It's fun. That's a fun little detail.
Well, if I play the role playing game with you, if you don't do a French accent,
I'm not
I'm.
going to do a French accent. Sorry.
Ooh, man, you just break immersion, huh?
I
You're
know.
you're the DM, right?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll find someone else. That's okay.
Yeah.
We'll find an actual French guy.
By all means, please. Okay. We're now getting into A and S tier. So my
You got
number
5 factions
five.
left.
Got 5 factions left. Yeah, we're getting into the A and S. So just like a disclaimer for the next two, I haven't played them as much as the others, but I just know that I enjoy them straight up. So this one, the reason it's going lower is because it's really, really, really hard to play, in my opinion, but in a way that's not frustrating. It's actually like really intriguing to like figure out how to get better at. And that is one of the the new expansion, the Marauder expansion, the Keepers in Iron. The Silver Badgers.
Yeah, yeah, if I'm guessing,
Hmm.
yeah, the two newest factions are pretty in depth.
Yeah. Especially these guys. These guys are hard.
They are,
Like
yeah.
they are really difficult. They're kind of like a pseudo Eerie style faction.
Yep.
So, but they don't work the way the Eerie works. You know, they have like a rope cards, but it's totally different. But they are talk about like a puzzly precise. These are the you have to be the most precise to get points with these guys. Um, so like the way they work
100%.
is
And lucky.
yeah,
And
and a
lucky
little
on
lucky
where your
on where your relics end up.
yeah,
So
where the relics end up, and yeah, and the way stations, right? Where you
mhm.
have to bring them.
Yeah, they're fascinating, and they only have 15 warriors. It's weird. They're weird.
They're
Like, in
so
fact, I've only played
tanky
them
though.
like they're so
God.
tanky. I've only played them I think 2 or 3 times, so I couldn't even like get in depth with them yet. Honestly, I haven't played them enough.
Yeah, yeah. So
I just know that they're
this is one of the
hard,
factions that
but like in a
isn't in
way
my
that
original ranking.
yeah, because they're one of the new ones. So they've
Hmm.
got these relics. Those relics are seeded all over the forest, and you have to score points. You have to secure these relics. But the way you secure them is you have to get a way station that can carry the items to a clearing adjacent to the forest, and then you have to control a certain number of clearings around that forest based on a random number on the relic. So you can flip up a relic
That's
and be like,
right.
I'm going to secure it. Oh, this relic is number 3. I control 2 clearings next to this forest. I can't secure it. And I don't know if there's a penalty or not. But also, you have to follow this retinue like the Eerie to even like get that sequence of events to happen. And also they're like a slow faction. So like you need to potentially be controlling 3 clearings. Well, this is like hard to do with them. And also delve, like you have to delve to flip it up. You can carry that relic into the clearing to try and secure it, but then people can attack that relic and put it back in the forest.
And
Now,
they get
granted,
rewarded
they
for
get rewarded.
taking the relic from you.
Hmm.
Um, and I mean, yeah, the silver lining there is so their abilities, Devout Knights, basically ignore a hit. And Root is not a game of high attack values.
Yeah,
So an
exactly.
extra hit is good, like the Corvid with the plot tokens, and defending against a hit is good.
Hmm.
And then yeah, their prize trophies. When an enemy removes a relic, they put it value face up in any forest and score an extra point. So they're getting 2 points.
Yeah, it's rough. Now you are tanky, so that's not going to happen that much, which is good.
No, but
Um,
what the worst part for me, I think, is you're incentivized to now attack them. Oh,
exactly.
you got a
Yeah.
what, a 3 point relic?
Hmm.
Yeah, I'm gonna make sure you cannot turn that in.
So also their way stations are not movable. They're buildings. So like you can't like move the way stations around like as a piece.
Hmm.
You have to like encamp and decamp the way stations and the move. It's so whack. It's so weird. And I think that kind of makes sense. It's when you have to pair them with the retinue that like makes them such a weird faction to play.
Yeah.
But like in a way that like I want to get good at them so bad. And what'll happen with them, I think, at least what happened in my first couple games is you can get lucky with these guys and get the 1 to 2 point relic or zero. I think there's some zero cost ones, maybe. I can't remember.
I
No,
didn't bring
one.
up the relics.
There's
I don't.
1, 2, and then 2 3s.
Okay, yeah, I was like, that'd be weird if they had
That's what it is.
relics that
Yeah.
were pay
So
like that were zero.
yeah, you can get lucky and uncover the 1 to 2 point relics, and you can secure a bunch and start to get a bunch of points. That's great. Okay, but eventually you're going to hit this point where you get to the 3 point relics, and those take a lot of effort to secure, to like take out of the forest and secure. So that's when you get it's like one of those things where it's those high point ones, and especially if you get the high point ones early on, those are the ones you're uncovering early. Then you have to put more effort into the beginning.
Yeah.
They're just slow. They're
But
also
if
slow
once you
moving.
secure them, like once they're on your board, you're good.
Hmm.
You're
Oh, you're
golden.
good. Yeah, and you get
And then
points for
it's
those,
that
which is
much
great.
easier to, which is actually, it might be easier for you to get the higher point values at the beginning of the game because less people can stop you because they
Hmm.
haven't gotten their faction going just yet. Uh,
Another weird thing is you can only have maximum 4 pieces in a clearing, which is an
yes.
interesting setback because they are very tanky. So something to keep in mind.
Yep.
Plus, their silver pieces look dope. I love those things.
Hmm.
We don't have any. We don't have the lore on these guys yet because they haven't put them in an RPG expansion,
I was
unfortunately.
wondering, I was like, are they in the book?
But I know they're like. I think just based on the yeah, they're devout knights. So whatever that means, like
Crusaders,
they're like
probably.
some kind of crusader. I guess they follow some old kingdom in the woodland. I don't know. Yeah, they're very interesting. In my homebrew setting, I think I just wrote down they were like knights from like the kingdom before the Eerie dynasties took over. Or they just kind
Oh,
of
that's
yeah,
cool.
they're like an old sect of knights that has carried on. Kind of like the Jedi is kind of how I think of them in my head.
Okay.
So yeah, they're very interesting. I love them, but they're
The
very
and if
hard.
it's been a while since I've actually played against them because they are very complex, and normally
Hmm.
I want to play someone else. I actually do agree with you. I think they're A. Um, even though, so a lot of the factions that I don't typically like to play are the ones that can be hard counters.
Yeah.
They're the exception. Like,
Hmm.
they're the ones that it's like they are constantly drawing your attention away while you're also being pulled in another direction. So the great thing about Root again is you don't want anyone to run away, but you will have to make decisions on who you think is the more value target.
Hmm.
And the keepers are always there. It's like, oh, you revealed a 3 point. Ugh.
Yeah, we got to worry about that
Okay, how
now.
can I
And that's
stop
the
you
thing
from?
is like they're very hard, but when you solve them and when you get a good sequence going, they can burst
Because
like
if I
big.
they program as well, right?
Yeah, they're like a programmer like the
They're
Eerie.
like their retinue of
Yeah.
being able to move or battle and or recover. Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I couldn't remember is exactly what they did. Now I can just look at the bird song, and that's
Hmm.
the best thing about this game is, oh, well, what do I do with my faction? Oh, just start bird song top to bottom. That tells you what to do.
Hmm.
Here are the general rules that apply to everyone, unless your faction says something different. But once you know those baseline rules, here's how your faction breaks it.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, I don't know these guys as well. Just because they are the newest. And it's like,
Yeah.
okay, if they've announced that they're doing more factions for the
Hmm.
game, from what I was told by Patrick specifically, two more factions, and I think he said at least two more.
Yeah.
If this is what they're coming up with, dear God, dude, it's like here's your sorry, the next faction is actually two boards. You run
Yeah.
two factions at the
To be
same time.
fair, I wouldn't surprise me if they do something like that. To be fair, this is paired with the Lord of the Hundreds, which is another like insanely simple faction. So like I'm cool with that.
Yeah. Where's our pirate faction? We don't really
Dude,
have one.
that's a Hoy. You go play a Hoy for that right there.
Yeah, so where's our good pirate
Mhm.
faction?
Yeah, that would be fun. Um,
Um, yeah, and what's also great is all the animals that they've picked, they're all real and like they didn't go mystical.
mhm.
There's no dragons, there's no fairies, like which is really cool. So it's like there needs to be a dog faction because you got
I would
cats.
love a dog faction. It'd
There
be so
needs to
much
be a
fun.
dog faction, and
Well, let me see if I
they
can find a
need to
picture.
build the dog faction where they have their passive ability is if anyone does anything to them, they're negatively affected because everyone
Mhm.
loves dogs. So it's
Well,
like,
look, in this art piece, you've got like a dog on a ship right here. So they've got to
ooh,
have a dog faction
yeah,
to mix with that as well. There's this other picture because I've thought about what animals I'd want them to do next. Let me see this picture that I think would be really, let me see if I can find it. Frogs. Look at that. Look at that picture of that frog. You
oh,
want to play
frogs would
that.
be cool
You
too.
know you do. I don't know what they do. No idea.
Turtles, why is there not a like dogs and
Turtles would be
turtles?
fun. Yeah. I would play a
Um,
turtle faction.
why do I not
I
work for these
I
companies?
actually I actually would put money. Well, I'm not gonna put money, but I want another single piece faction, actually.
I think that would be good. Well, you got
I
one.
would
You have
love
another
that.
vagabond.
No, that's not the
I
Vagabond.
do
I
not
want
know a
like
single person who plays Root and says two vagabonds is good.
yeah, I want another single piece character to
What's
play.
like a
I don't know what they
lone
would
wolf
do, but it would be
animal?
so much
Because
fun.
the vagabonds are
Literally a
raccoons.
wolf.
It's
You
a
can literally
wolf.
do the lone wolf.
Oh, well, the vagabond's weird because it's a group of different animals.
Well,
You
yeah, it's because
literally have the arbiter as the faction. Sorry.
anyone could be a vagabond. Yeah, that's why.
Yeah, so it's like okay.
Hmm.
So because you have a possum, an owl, raccoon, beaver, um, basically raccoons.
Yeah.
I guess there's a cat as a scoundrel. The possum's cute. Um, so yeah, so the keepers in iron is they're insane.
Hmm.
I think
They're a
last time
headache in the best way.
yeah, yeah, no, I agree.
There
I
was
think
something, and like I don't know what is different about these guys because these are more complicated than the duchy, but I just enjoy their puzzle more than the duchy. I couldn't even tell you. Don't even know why. The duchy
um
is too much of a headache for me, but these guys, I want to be better at these guys so
well,
bad.
based off who's left, I bet I can pinpoint is the keepers of iron, the puzzle is all kind of enclosed solitarily up on you.
Hmm.
Versus the duchy has a lot of moving parts that are out on the board that
Yeah.
are affected by a lot of people. The only thing affected by the board for the keepers are these relics, which are their entire strategy,
Hmm.
but everything else is meticulous on how you're setting up.
Yeah.
Um, that would be my guess on why you like them more, or it could
Hmm.
just be the new hotness. So
It could
you're
be,
like,
maybe, but
Duchy's
like,
old school. I don't like them anymore.
yeah, I don't know.
Because
There's
you used to
something
hate
about
Root, right?
I did used to hate Root really bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
That's a fun story
so
for
you didn't
another
have like
time.
the sexiness of like the Duchy at the time, whereas the keepers you're into Root. Now you're like, ooh, they're so cool.
Yeah, that maybe that could be part of it. I don't know. Yeah, I just maybe what's really interesting is these are classified as a militant faction, which is wild to me because I don't consider them as aggressive, but
Well, I think
whereas
they would have to be. If people are trying to prevent the relics, they have to be aggressive to get to them.
yeah, I think there's just
Um,
something about the puzzle in these guys that makes sense to me, and I enjoy the struggle figuring them out. There's something about the puzzle with how to build the duchy that I don't enjoy. I think there's too many moving pieces, like you said. With these guys, I can look at me like I know the relics and the retinue. I can mesh those two. With the duchy, there's the two different kinds of buildings, and there's the borough, and there's the nobles, squires, and lords, and like there's the whole revealing cards and matching. It's just it's too much for me. It's too much.
yeah,
It's too much. I don't like it.
yeah. I'm
So
taking a look at like more of their boards. So like yeah, with
mhm.
the delve ability, which again you must battle if able, and then you can delve, which allows you to rule with the keeper war. You can flip up and move relics from an adjacent forest. So that's how you find them, and then recover from a matching clearing. Take any number of relics of the same types as way stations there, and discard this card, and then pop them down. So
Mhm.
and then yeah, so I mean 2, 4, 6, you're getting 8 points if you happen to find all relics, which on top of that probably wins you the game.
Mhm.
Although I don't think so. I don't think there's any faction that by points on their board alone gets them to 30.
Yeah. But
I
don't forget
don't
you
think
also
so.
get +2 points when you fill in one of the columns.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, so
Yeah.
you're getting 8 points from that,
Yeah.
but
So
I don't
you're
remember the value of the relics that you said.
1, 2, and then 2 threes.
Okay.
So yep.
So yeah, I think with more plays, the keepers could creep into S off of theme alone because I actually think they're super cool. I just really
Hmm.
like this this idea.
I do too.
But yeah, there are a lot. When you're looking at these boards, this is like a wall of text, and you're like,
It's
oh
packed too. It is packed with text.
yeah. So I agree. Yeah, keepers
Mhm.
and iron up in an A.
Yeah, and next, same reason I put these in, I put this one in A. I actually this could totally be an S faction for me, but it's the other new faction, so I haven't played it a ton. But it's just so simple.
Nope,
It's
not wrong one.
beautiful in its simplicity, and they're so cool. The Lord of the Hundreds, they go above the Keepers in A for me.
Yeah, Lord of the Hundreds is another S tier.
Yeah,
For me,
that's totally understandable. Like I could be convinced to put them in S.
they you want to talk about the war faction?
Mm-hmm.
It is the Lord of Hundreds. They are so much fun, and they're funny, kind of
Yeah,
with their mood card, like their leader being like have
yeah.
bipolar disorder.
I love that. And yeah, so like I love the Lord is both a single piece like the Vagabond who has an army with him. Like it's so
Hmm.
much fun. I love the dark red meeples. I think they're the best color. Well,
No,
second best because
Corvid.
second best. We'll get to my favorite in a bit. But like the dark red meeples are great. There's 20 of them. The war plus the warlord meeple, which is dope, and they're simple. You punch things. You get more items to let you punch more things, and the more things you punch, the more things you control, the more points you get. It's just so easy, man. It's so easy. Sure, you have to worry about the mood, and you have to worry about getting items for people, but like at the end of the day, what do you do with the Lord of the Hundreds? You just fight people every turn. That's it, man. So simple, so easy, and they're powerful at fighting. That's the
Yeah, they
thing.
are. Yeah,
So
because they at the in evening get an exponential amount of points if you
yeah,
just control areas.
just
Like
a steady stream, a
which
steady
you're
little trickle.
forced to do. You're forced to
Mm.
go in and raise and attack and destroy enemy clearings.
Mhm.
And not only are you getting points for doing that, then it's like, oh, look at that. It's my evening. We oppressed. I control 5 areas. That's just 3 points.
Yeah. And you've got a mob that you can incite, which does little fun little things that are interesting and enjoyable. Yeah, they're a counter to the Vagabond, which is also good. if you're in a group like mine or a competitive group where the Vagabond is super ultra competitive, these guys were a good counter for them because they have to fight each other for items. So that leads to a fun dynamic and conflict between those two factions. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I just don't think I have anything bad to say. They're simple, they're fun, they're powerful. They're just like you can't go wrong playing these guys. They're so simple. I only put them in A because they're still new
Yeah.
and I haven't gotten to play them as much as I want to. And they're not on the digital game yet. They're not on the digital app. So
Oh yeah, I forgot
the
about the app.
moment the moment these guys go on the app, whew,
Yeah, I've
incredible.
heard the app is fantastic. I heard that's
Oh,
the way you actually teach people to play.
if you wanna game sometime, we could play games of Root on the app. Like I love playing games on the app. When
Do
these two go
they
on the
is
app, I cannot wait.
the app do they have bots like or do you have to have other players?
So they do have bots.
Okay.
And yeah, they have bots that you can set up games with them. I don't love playing with the bots
Okay.
personally, but I think if you get at least 3 people, which we wouldn't have any problem doing because anybody can play, and you can do asynchronous games. That's the big thing. You can just play on throughout
Gotcha.
the day, which is awesome. All right, that's how my friends and I think play Root the most. But yeah, once these bad boys go on that app, oh
Oh, you're talking about
man,
like
I
in
can't wait.
like what Civ 6 does, where it just waits till someone's turn goes and then it's like,
Yeah,
oh,
so
next.
like yeah, so it's someone's turn and they have a day to do their turn or whatever. And they
Oh,
can just do it
okay.
at any point during the day and then it goes to the next person and we'll have just
Nice.
like a little group chat where we can text about the game so we can table talk or whatever. Yeah.
Cool.
No, can't wait till these guys go on the app. I think that's the only reason is that I don't get to play this route in person as much, but I play on the app all the time and that's
Hmm.
why I haven't got to play these guys as much. But they're so solid. They're so easy. They're so simple. They
Yeah.
look cool. You know,
It is a sexy red. Yeah, it is a
that's
very dark
like
blood red, which
that
makes
blood red
sense.
looks so cool.
Yeah. So yeah, they have contempt for trade. When you craft an item, you gain it, but score no listed points, which is fine because they need it for their horde,
Yeah.
and for cards. Looters at the start of battle as attacker, you may say you're looting the defender. You deal no rolled hits, but they do at the end if you rule the battle clearing. You get to take items, which is great, because you
Hmm.
can just take items away from the Vagabond.
Yep.
Which actually the last time I played them, the Vagabond was not in that game. It was Lord of Hundreds, Keepers of Iron, the Corvid, and I think Woodland Alliance
Hmm.
was in on it, um, which made it pretty difficult because the Lord of Hundreds was just swarming
Yeah.
everything.
Obviously, a
Uh,
good counter would be to just not craft. But the thing is, like, if nobody's crafting, that will stall the game out,
yeah.
like a lot. So people are going to craft because they have to close that gap to get their final 10 points, right?
Hmm.
Um, so eventually, people are gonna break and they're gonna have to craft, and that's when you swoop in and you steal those items.
No, exactly. I mean, the Lord of Hundreds can still craft.
Yeah, he can still
So
craft.
it's like,
Yeah,
okay, well,
exactly.
I'll craft for myself. I'm not going to get points, but I need them for prowess, which helps me for recruiting. Um, And then, yeah, the different mood cards. Rowdy, in the evening, you draw one more card. If your Warlord's clearing has 3 or more enemy pieces, draw two. Um, yeah, Lavish is the one that it just goes to if you don't have anything else.
Hmm.
Jubilant, after you incite your Warlord's clearing, you may roll the mob die to place a mob up to 4 times. Stubborn, and battle with your Warlord, you ignore the first hit take. So they're also similar, kind of like to the Duchy, in that your mood is kind of going to dictate the strategy you're going for.
Yeah. What I love about the mood though, as opposed to the mole, is that the mood is kind of accidental. Like, and somebody's gonna say that's wrong. You should plan around different items to get certain moods. Maybe that's true, but I find the hundreds are so easy that you can just get whatever mood and be like, cool, I will just play around this mood and be fine. Whereas with the
Yeah.
moles, you have to be precise about which leaders you have in your little, you know, which ministers you want to sway. And I find that
Hmm.
a little bit more of a headache than just, oh, I have the jubilant mood to this round. Okay, cool. What can I do with that ability?
I'm trying
That's so
to
much easier.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. So you choose a different mood that does not show an item in your horde. Um, and I'm trying to remember because the icons up at the top left. Oh yeah, so the items that you put into your horde dictate the cards that you cannot play.
Hmm.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay. I was trying to think. I was like, oh, do you lose your mood? Not the same way that the duchy loses their royalty. Um, it's just that if you get like a sword, you can no longer do the wrathful mood,
Yeah.
which is disgusting because as an attacker in battle with your warlord, you deal an extra hit. Um, when looting, you do deal this hit. But
Hmm.
yeah, it's like, oh, okay, well, you always have to choose a different mood. So the more hordes you get, which you're getting points for anyway, um, the more commands you have, that increases how many actions you have, and then prowess lets for recruit. Uh, Yeah. I mean, definitely take your moods into consideration. I wouldn't randomly just start picking up items, because then that's actually what happened to me one time was I wanted to attack more, and so I picked up a sword and I was like, oh crap. My
Yeah.
mood that allows me to do a lot of really good attacking, I can't pick. Um,
Once you get into the 3 values, though, ooh, you're cooking with gas.
you really are. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're kind of a rich get richer.
Yep.
Because there's no way besides their ability to steal items
Hmm.
like from people, and they also don't have buildings or anything, so they're not
Nope.
affected by the lizard cult.
They just
Um,
hit people.
they're just
Yeah, and
like, oh, it's like
if the
like the
lizard
cult's
cult
like
converts one of your soldiers, that's fine. You've got 20 other soldiers. Who cares, man? Like, it
you
doesn't
come across the
matter.
lizard cult, you're like, oh, looks like someone's a little lost.
Exactly. Yeah. So
I agree. That's why they're S tier for me. They're
honestly, I
just
could be convinced to put them up there, but I think just because they're new, I should be fair and be like, well, I'm not there yet. So
yep. All right, what's your number 3?
okay, so I debated whether or not to put this in A or S, and honestly could go either way. This is my ultimate comfort faction because they were my first faction I played, and I've probably played them the most, even though they're not my favorite anymore. So I think I'll put them at the top of A and save S tier for my like 2 like favorite. But the ultimate comfort faction for me, the one that I first started root with, is gotta be the Eerie dynasties. They go top of A for me. I enjoy them. I think they're fun. They're a puzzle faction, but I think they're a fun puzzle. They're like a puzzle that they're one of those that you play, and after the first game, you're like, okay, like I could play that better.
Look
And they're just
how
very easy.
look at this. Look how simple it used to be.
I know. I know. And then you look at the keepers. I know.
Which makes sense. Like
Yeah,
you can only do simple so for so long.
it's true. Where to start? I enjoyed the decree. I think it's a fun mechanic. It's
Mm-hmm.
a super fun puzzle to play out.
It's programming.
Um, it's
They're the
programming,
programming faction.
programming faction. I find really enjoyable. And it's a programming faction where the luck doesn't really affect you too much unless you really screw up. You can typically always find a good decree with the cards that you have. I like the 4 leaders; those are fun.
Oh yeah, I do have them on me.
I love that they just get a steady stream of points. It's just very easy to worry about. You just conquer a place and you build a roost, and you get a steady stream of points. And yeah, I mean, you've got some limits because if you go into turmoil, you'll lose points, which means you're typically breaking even that round, is what usually happens when you go into turmoil. And you don't get a lot of points for crafting, but that's
No,
okay. You have a leader that
you at
goes
least
around
get
that.
one.
Yeah. And here's the big thing. I think this is so great. You rule clearings where you are tied with pieces.
Mm-hmm.
That's so useful, actually.
Oh
Unless
wait.
a lizard built a garden, which we
Unless there's a
hate.
garden
Okay,
there.
I'm just gonna say it. The Eerie hates the lizards. The Eerie can get screwed so hard
Is
by
that lore
one.
wise or is that
No, gameplay
uh,
wise.
oh, okay.
This is why I hate the lizards for so long. Is because they just mess with the Eerie more than anyone else, in my opinion.
Here's the thing. So the Eerie is definitely good. They can ramp up so quick.
Yeah,
I would probably put the Eerie in B.
that's
In
fine.
some games, I could actually put them into C because you can look over and see, oh, you have to do this.
Hmm.
I can 100% stop that.
Yeah.
And now you're going to, and even if you're breaking even, you then have to build back up.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
that's brutal. So yeah, they can ramp up of just roost, just like, oh, boom, and just exponential amount of
They're
points.
Here's why they're so good. They're the only faction, to my knowledge, that actively can lose points. But the thing is, they're obviously so solid that that's typically not that debilitating. Like
Hmm.
you're not out of the game if you go into one turmoil. Maybe if you turmoil 5 times in a row, okay, we can talk then. But like that's probably not going to happen. Hopefully, so
But in a
let's
game
just
like Root, if everyone is playing their faction well and you're the
mhm.
only one losing points,
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
so. And I'm not saying I'm playing against master class players, nor am I a master class player myself. I'm just saying
Mhm.
the fact that the Eerie can be just kind of like stonewalled is pretty
Yeah,
brutal.
they're the easiest to look down and be like, can just do this one thing to stop them.
Yeah,
Right. Oh, they have to recruit in red. Okay, we just take out that roost. It's so easy. Just look down and do that.
right, right.
Yeah.
And again, my favorite faction, the Lizard Cult, is just like, oh, what do you have to do? You have to, yeah, you have to recruit in red. Oh, okay, I guess I'll just spend these acolytes, and now you
Yeah.
physically cannot do that.
Mm-hmm. No, that's why dude, that's why they're so annoying because like more than anyone, like okay, look, if you as the Underground Duchy or the Lord of the Hundreds saw that if you destroyed this red roost, that I would go into turmoil, and you sent an entire force through my defensive line, and you battled, and you planned, and you destroyed the roost, and I went into turmoil, you know what? Honestly, I'm not even mad. That's totally fair. You outbattled me. We had a campaign. It was great. But when I'm chilling in my defenses and I have spent so much brain power mathing out my decree and being able to manipulate it exactly the way I want it, and you as the lizard cult just randomly go, oh, I have to do a conversion. Okay, that random red roost, yeah, it's just a garden now. Screw that. Screw that. I hate that so much. It's so annoying. I can't stand it.
That is fair.
So
Yeah,
that
and
is
there
why I've hated Blizzard Cult for so long, personally, is I play the Eerie a lot, and my friends played the Blizzard Cult a lot, and you just can't do anything, except influence the Lost Souls or whatever. Screw that.
yeah.
No, you can't. As the Eerie, no, you're not doing that. You're putting your cards into the decree. So anyway, that's my little soapbox. That's why I hated them.
Yeah. Yeah, the different leaders, Despot, if you remove at least one enemy building, you score a point or token in battle. Commander, and as an attacker in battle, you deal an extra hit. Builder, ignore your disdain for trade when you craft.
Mhm.
And then the charismatic, you place 2 warriors, not 1, each time you recruit.
Yeah.
So their different leaders are good. What happens if do you just not have a leader if you go into turmoil 4 times?
I think you reshuffle the leaders and start
Okay.
again,
You just
but
quit
that's
because it's like,
yeah.
well,
I actually don't
clearly
know.
I have 0 points now.
Yeah, I'm actually not sure. I don't know if that happens that often, but we could definitely look that up at some point.
I've never
I
seen
like
it
them.
happen. It's
Yeah.
probably like, dude, really turmoil
You're
4
really
times?
screwing up if you've turmoil 4 times.
Yeah,
And if you've turmoil 4 times, someone's probably already won. So
that's also true. Yeah,
yeah.
I mean they're very straightforward. I just personally don't like the fact that they could easily just be, because they are programmed and they have to run
Mhm.
through their decree, otherwise they're penalized um, by losing points in a game where most people are consistently gaining points.
Yeah.
It's pretty rough, but again, they have the ways to be able to. I mean, if the Eerie are one of those factions that if you were to let any one faction run away with it, I think the Eerie outpaces them all.
For sure. Yeah, that's why they have the turmoil mechanic to begin with, right? To
Exactly.
keep them in check. And honestly, you can get to a point with the Eerie where like you can strategically turmoil, which is crazy. That's so weird to me. I don't know if I'm there yet, but sometimes you're like, okay, I've used all I can with this leader. I want a battle leader. Let me purposefully turmoil so I can go into my, the commander build. And that's fun
Yeah.
that you can do that. I enjoy that. They're a comfort faction for me. They are my first ones. I've played them the most. I think their puzzle is a fun puzzle, the programming puzzle. I enjoy that.
hmm
I just think they're fun. So that's why I put them in A instead of S. But I guess you could, for sentimental value, put them in S for me. But I think where they should be is an A.
Okay. Yeah, we'll give them an A. All right. Which one is your number 2?
All right, my number 2 is the faction before I played the Lizard Cult. These are played against the Lizard Cult. These are the faction that I hated for so long until I played them. And I think they were the first faction I played outside of the Eerie. And this also coincided when the moment I started playing different factions is the moment I actually started enjoying Root for the first time after a year of playing. And that's the Woodland Alliance.
This is so funny.
You don't like the
Okay.
Woodland Alliance?
No. I love the
Oh, okay.
Woodland Alliance.
Yeah.
I would actually probably put the Woodland Alliance at S tier too. And
Same.
you
Steer.
know that they're good, um, because I think they're the only faction that had to be rebalanced.
Yes, they were.
They had to get a new board reprinted because they
Yep.
were ramping up too much.
I'd also like to say what's interesting about this faction is that if you look on the back, their complexity is high. Uh, maybe this sounds pretentious. I think they're maybe the simplest faction to play. They're so easy, in my opinion. Like once you know their shtick, it's like a brainless faction that you can play because you
You
just
want
know
to
what you're supposed to do every turn.
you want to talk about, here's your woo pity faction.
Yeah,
Whenever I don't remember. Oh, you were saying the Corvid were like that. None of
yeah.
these factions are as dude. We're just you little like
Hmm.
rebels. And I remember the very first time I played Root, I was borderline screaming at the table. I was like, "Fucking deal!" And I was the cat, so it was
Yeah.
thematic. Like, 'cause I was like, "Deal with
People,
these rebels."
yeah, and people don't get it. Like new players will be like, "What do you mean? They're not even on the board, bro." And
They're
then,
just fucking
yeah,
kill them.
when I taught a new group last week, and they were kind of like, "Oh, haha, the Woodland Alliance, whatever," and then somebody was about to do a dominance victory, so I just looked down and went, oh, "Okay, I guess I'll just do like a quick 14-point turn and win." And they were like, "Wait, what?" And I was like, That's the Woodland Alliance, bro. Like,
Yep.
like people don't get it, and then you just have a 15-point burst and you win. You end the game. It's
Yep.
crazy. And they're so, in my opinion, they're so brain dead. They're so easy. Like you throw all your cards into your supporters, you throw down a base, and you just spread sympathy with all your supporters at the start of your turn, and then you just spend your military phase moving a troop and turning it into a sympathy.
Yep.
And you just poop up this point track. It's so simple. And like, well, how do I get supporters? You just throw down sympathy in the middle of the map where everybody walks. And what are they going to do? Right? If they
Yeah,
walk
that's
into
right.
it, you get a
Yeah.
supporter. If they attack it, sure, you lose that point, but you get a supporter. So you're just going to spread more sympathy next turn. Simple. Like people generate the points for you.
Yeah, and they're so
awesome.
hard to attack because if they're defending, then they
Yep.
actually get the higher value, which sucks.
Yeah, and which is great because like just losing a base will set you back quite a bit.
Yeah.
But it's really hard.
Oh
People have to
wait,
like really commit.
how can you just remove bases as the lizard cult?
Yes, you can do that, which is also really, really, really freaking annoying. We don't like the lizard cult as the Woodland Alliance. And I also think that I can't remember, there might be a rule with the gardens. Let me check something about the gardens.
But yeah, so like they're outraged when the player removes sympathy or moves any warriors into a sympathetic clearing. They must add a matching card from their hand. If they cannot, they show you their hand, but then you get a card. So they're not like hard counter by being like, oh, I don't have a fox clearing. It's like, okay, well, I'm just gonna get a card now.
Yeah.
Just the revolt having 2 supporters just removes all enemy pieces there. And a base gets popped in there.
The rare times where you can revolt in a clearing populated with pieces is awesome. Eventually, after you do it once or twice, people are not going to let that happen anymore.
Exactly.
But when it does happen, like people just happen to not be able to get rid of it, you're sitting pretty. You can get like 3 points just by clearing a marquee clearing with a bunch of soldiers, and they're going to be
right.
Mad at you.
Now their counter is they have like 10 warriors.
Yeah, that's
like
their counter.
They're so limited on that. So their evening, by placing warriors in the officers box, it's like you like their best bet is they do not have actual board presence.
Yeah.
So their evenings, they're not really doing a whole lot.
You're never gonna willingly initiate a battle as a Woodland Alliance. There's no way because you're just not gonna win because you're not gonna have that many pieces.
And you're doing guerrilla warfare. Why would you ever attack someone?
You're a defensive faction. What you do is you throw down a base, you put 1 to 2 probably 2 warriors in that base. It's gonna be really hard for people to attack it unless they throw 10 warriors at it, which is great.
Yeah.
And then all you do is you spend your military. You just need 2 to 3 warriors in your officers box, and all you have to do is recruit a troop in a clearing, move it somewhere, and then just organize and turn that troop into a sympathy, because you can ignore that martial law deal with the sympathy track, and you can just throw out, you're like, oh, I organize, I get 3 points. And it's great. And then when people get freaked out and they attack your sympathy, you get more supporters, which will let you, it just feeds itself. You throw down a couple sympathy that is congested in the middle of the map. People will like try and attack you a bunch at the first, but they're just feeding you more supporters, which lets you throw them down. And eventually the machine, like they're not going to be able to stop a revolt. You're eventually going to get a revolt, probably in the second to fourth turn of the game. And from then on, like people have to really commit to taking out that base to set you back. And granted, they will set you back if they do that, but
and I think that's why a lot of the factions that have come out since the core game have been higher warrior factions. The Duchy, Oak Tunnel, Swarm, base is gone. The Lords of the Hundreds, Swarm, base is gone. Keepers of Iron, it's like I don't give a fuck if you get the higher value. I ignore damage. So it's just, but that shows how powerful the Woodland Alliance is you're not a threat until you are.
And so the way you counter them 2 ways. You take advantage of their martial law. You swarm them with groups of 3 or more warriors, so they have to spend more supporters to spread sympathy, so they're much slower. And secondly, I mean, obviously you can destroy their bases. The other thing is that these actually, funnily enough, they're great, but they're more map dependent. Actually, I've noticed.
I can see that.
Yeah. Like I'm assuming with these that we're playing on the regular fall map, that's the one I play the most on. And in that case, they're really solid. But the winter map is actually really hard for these guys. The lake map is really hard for these guys.
I played on the winter map a couple times, because that's the only difference about that one is just the faction types are random, right?
Yeah. Well, and the clearings are random. And the thing is, because of the way it's segmented, in the fall map, you can kind of shoot your sympathy a bunch of ways, but in the winter map, you can get pigeonholed into a corner, and people can just ignore it, and you can't like break through. And that can be annoying.
Another kind of hard counter, or not hard counter, but counter for them is if you're a faction that doesn't really care about cards,
Hmm.
you just wipe sympathy. Okay,
Yeah.
I'll trade a card for a point,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. I mean, if you're
therefore,
always destroying their sympathy every time they place it, they'll never get a base down,
yeah,
So until it's too late for them to win. So that is the other hard card. But everybody has to commit. They have to commit to doing
exactly.
that.
And for the most part, I don't think there's actually a faction that doesn't care about cards.
Yeah.
Um, like they're all good because not every
Hmm.
card is crafting. So it's
So
some of them are like, hey, if
yeah.
you control these 4 areas, that's 5 points. It's like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Typically what'll happen when you're playing an experienced Woodland Alliance game is that everybody will be like, okay, we have to take out the sympathy every turn, which is hard. You're not gonna be able to break through that. But eventually, like people just can't continue to do that. Like they're one of those, like it's one of those where it's like, oh, I'm never gonna break through. But all you have to do is break through one time, right? And then like the moment, even though it seems harsh that people are always ganging up on you before you even put stuff down, the moment you break through even once and get down a base and start placing more than one sympathy a turn, you're just a huge pain in the butt. And people like
Yeah.
can't slow you down. And
Well,
then
here's the
you
thing.
also have huge crafting ability. You can get a lot of points on crafting too, because you craft using sympathy. And
Yeah.
once you break through and you've got 4 or 5 sympathy, you can throw down these like three cost craft cards.
Hmm.
Like, and
Well,
you can
here's
get
the
all, you
other
craft all
gross
these
thing.
items and get so many points. It's crazy.
One of your C tier factions bypasses their outrage because their outrage is whenever a player moves into there. The
Hmm.
Corvid place
That's
their
true.
people in there, and it's like, I did not move here. I am just here. Oh, you
Hmm.
have no people here? I guess I'll play some plot tokens.
The same thing with the Vagabond. Like
Yeah.
they don't count, which is really annoying. It'd be interesting if I don't know. Like I wonder if like that could be a way to check the Vagabond a little bit, but I'm not the designer. I'm sure they had that. I'm sure they had that conversation. So don't even. I'm not even saying that should be a thing. But
Yeah.
yeah, you're right with the Corvids, which is another reason some the Corvids can be annoying sometimes
Yeah.
because they're probably not moving a lot. It's probably very rare that the
No,
Corvids are
they
moving.
they kind of they just fly in, drop a
Hmm.
plot, and it's like, oh God, what is that? Oh, I don't have any warriors available to go deal with that.
Hmm.
Okay, I guess we'll see what it is. And it's like, no, actually, I'll remove it. Haha! It was a battle one or whatever where they spread out.
Yeah,
It's like, oh
I
God, they have so many people now.
I think probably the only critique of the Woodland Alliance, funnily enough, the way you said about the cats is kind of like I said, because I think they're actually really easy once you get their stick. I'm like, you just have to do the same thing every game. They can kind of be boring,
Yeah.
I guess, because you're like gameplay wise, they're very boring, especially if you're not actually doing like the big revolt moves or anything. But the thing is, getting a 12 point, 14 point burst is worth some of that monotony, in my opinion. Like it's just fun to be like to have that threat where everybody's like, oh, they can get a 12-point burst. We have to like I
Hmm.
enjoy that. Like gameplay wise, once you hit their stick, they're not the most stimulating because I think they're one of those like when you play them, I look down the board and I know, okay, I have to do this, and this. Like there's not really like a hard decision. Like to play them well, I put a sympathy right there, obviously.
Yeah.
But I don't know, getting a lot of points is fun. So
No, it is. And since the game is first to 30,
mhm,
if you got some points throughout the game and you do a 12 point, 15 point swing, you probably just won.
yeah. So
Uh, but that's also the thing. The core box factions, Woodland Alliance, Vagabond, Eerie, and Cats, they're the core box, so they've been
mhm,
figured out. Not
that's true.
necessarily figured out. I mean, that's why Root is so fantastic. Is that because if you just had the core box, then yeah, they'd be figured out. But because they kept supporting the game, which is why people rave about this game, is because it's supported.
Mhm.
They added modules. I mean, obviously we didn't take into consideration like the leaders or whatever they were called, like
Yeah.
the extra like modules you can throw in, or different maps. Like like you said, this the Woodland Alliance are harder to play on the winter one, but then there's the other two
Yeah.
maps
I
that
was
I
every time I've played the Wooden Lights on the winter map, I've had a much more frustrating experience because they
exactly.
feel a lot more luck dependent there. But
Yeah, and I have never taken that into consideration. Like we probably
mhm,
could have looked at these factions and been like, "Oh yeah, I wonder how the Corvid does
mhm.
on like if they're playing different on each different map."
Well, and the thing with the different maps, the other maps is that you could play the winter map 2 times and they could be totally different maps because the clearing colors are shuffled.
Yeah.
So like you could have a much easier time on one assortment of the winter map and then another one, just the way the clearings are shuffled out is
Yeah.
way too hard.
And
Because the
apparently there's
fall
also
map
that.
is locked in and it's balanced, like any
Yes.
faction can have a much easier time on that map, in my
Yes.
opinion.
And there's also that second deck that a
Yep.
lot of people much prefer from what I'm
Mhm.
seeing. So that changes it. So yeah, there's a lot of factors that go in that it's like, yeah, Woodland Alliance, the cats, they could be boring to play, but you play on all these different modules, it changes.
Yep.
So I agree. So my S tiers are the Lord of Hundreds or the Lizard Cult #1, uh, Lord of Hundreds #2, Woodland Alliance, I'd probably put at 3.
Yeah, I think it's a solid place for it. The only one that eclipses it is the final one that we've got, and I think from the way you're shaking your head, you disagree with me, and that's okay. That's okay. The Riverfolk Company,
You
top
could
of
not have
S.
had a harder D tier.
They are my favorite faction, easily. I love them. They're my favorite looking meeple. They're
Oh,
like
the
the
light
otters are
blue.
cute. The light blue, the otters. Look at them. They're so cute.
Yeah.
And
Now here's the
here's
thing.
why I liked them. They're the tabletop faction. They're the
Mhm.
table politics faction. They're the trader faction. I enjoy negotiation games. So
Mhm.
these take a route from a strategy game to me into a negotiation game, which is where I excel way more. And so I find these way more enjoyable. Now, funnily enough, I don't know if I win with these a bunch.
You do not.
They
I can
are
tell
they're
you,
kind
you
of like the
don't.
Lizard Cult. They're harder to win. I have won with them before, but they're so much fun. And I enjoy getting those wins and getting to the point where, because here's the thing about the River Cult, they have one easy counter, right? Here it is. You ready? If you play against the game of the Lizard Cult, it's very simple. You just never trade with them ever. You just never buy from them, and they probably aren't going to win. So that's why it's fun as a Lizard Cult to break through that assumption because people know they shouldn't buy your cards. But when you can convince them to buy your cards and the whole table yells at them, and you get those sweet, sweet little funds that go into your little box.
Did you
Hmm.
say the counter to the Lizard Cult is to not let them
Sorry,
trade with you?
the Riverfolk, the
Oh,
counter
okay.
for
I was
them.
like, I'm like,
Just
it's
don't
not
buy.
up to
Yeah, sorry,
you.
excuse me. The counter to the Riverfolk.
Oh,
Don't buy from the Riverfolk.
okay. I was
Now
like, what?
there are factions that are way more inclined to buy from you. So for instance, this is also dependent on faction spread a little bit,
Hmm.
like your win rate. The Lizard Cult is great for the Riverfolk. They
Oh yeah.
will are much more inclined to. They have a lot of extra troops, and they're very dependent on colored cards that they need.
Yes.
So the Riverfolk is really good with them. Probably the Underground Duchy would be pretty good for them, and the Eerie
Literally
as
any
well.
faction that has 20 plus is
Yeah,
good. The
but like,
cats, the Eerie, the
yeah,
Duchy, the Lord of Hundreds,
hmm
the
yeah,
Lizard
probably.
Cult.
So the ones that obviously aren't going to buy from you are the Vagabond, the Woodland Alliance. Under no instance, as the Woodland Alliance, should you ever buy from the
Yeah.
Riverfolk.
The
No
Corvid,
way.
they don't have the
Um,
resources.
yeah, Corvids probably. The Corvids aren't going to do it. But
I
the
think that's
Lizard
it.
Cult,
Yeah.
the Duchy, the cats, you can sell blue cards to them. That's going to be really good for you.
Yeah.
If you got blue cards, that's when you sell to the Marquis because otherwise they don't really care about colored cards. And yeah, like the retinue cards, like so for instance, you could just get some factions where you're like, oh, the Riverfolk is not going to be good with the spread. Or maybe there's only
Hmm.
one faction that'll pair well with the Riverfolk. Okay, don't pick the Riverfolk then, right?
Yeah.
But
So
I
real
just
quick,
love them. I just
I do not think the Riverfolk Company is bad. I completely
mhm.
agree with you. I love negotiation games.
Yeah.
In Root, when I'm comparing all the rest of them, they are the
Mhm.
faction that is completely trashed the
Yeah.
most.
Interesting.
Because it is entirely group dependent. No one can play if you do you like negotiation? No. Okay, well you cannot play this faction. Do
Yeah, that's
people in
fair.
your if you in a because Root is best at 4.
Hmm.
Um it plays up to 6, doesn't it?
Yes, but you shouldn't.
No, you should.
You
I don't think I've
shouldn't.
ever no, I've done 3. 3 is
At most
surprisingly not
five.
bad.
Yeah, three isn't terrible.
Before is its sweet spot. If your group doesn't negotiate,
Hmm.
Riverfolk isn't doing anything. They're the only faction
It's
because we've been talking
well,
about like hard counters, like counters for
yeah.
all these factions. The Riverfolk is the one that is the most
It's the
group
easiest. Just
dependent.
don't buy from them, and they're not going
Yeah,
to win, right?
right.
Here's the thing: it's your whole group doesn't have to be a negotiation. The onus is on you, the Riverfolk player, to know how to negotiate. To know how to negotiate. So in that sense, as the Riverfolk, you actually need to know. You can't just play the Riverfolk and just play the Riverfolk and not worry about the other factions. You need to know exactly how the other factions work so that you can look at your cards and then look at the marquee player and be like, "Hey, you realize that this card right here would let you do exactly what you want to do on your turn." Like that's what you want to be. You want to be that guy to be like, oh, Lizard Cult, you need a yellow card? I have two right here.
Yeah.
You need to be that guy that's like, hey, Vagabond, nobody's crafting anything. Look, I've got three craftable items in my hand. You should buy this from. Actually, wait, how does I don't can't remember how the Vagabond trades. Maybe they just don't.
They give
But you know
you
what I mean,
cards to take items. So I think
right?
where is it? Commit funds to empty spaces to
Mhm.
on trade post to craft rather than gaining the listed effect of the crafting card. You may discard the card to place a warrior in the payments box. So you need people to trade with you to be able to
Yeah.
commit to funds to
So
craft.
the good thing is even if nobody trades with you, you'll get a little trickling of your own funds, which is great. But
Yeah.
and the other thing with them is the strategy is really easy. You can do the otter ball strategy, which is what I like to do. It's a simple thing. You don't spread out as the Riverfolk. You
No.
clump all your dudes in one ball. Now, the moment you lose that ball, that's the otter ball. The moment you lose the otter ball, that's also a hard counter. If somebody can whittle down that otter ball, yeah, you're not gonna be able to build back up. But as long as when you have that little moving band, and as you're moving around and establishing trade posts, you're soaking up those because every time you put a trade post, you get an otter that goes down. You move in, you take the otter with you. You're like building up this giant mass that nobody wants to attack.
Yeah.
So they're fun. I love them.
They are the most disparaging group because it's like I have them at D tier. They were my number
Mhm.
8 whenever I did
Yeah.
them, and then the two factions,
I love how
Creepers
we
and
have
Fires.
polar opposites. Like that's so
I know
funny.
for our 1 and 10 is
Mhm.
yeah. But I will say, unlike because you've been shitting on the lizard folk this whole time, even though you're wrong, even though you've completely said how they counter basically every single faction. So in
Mhm.
terms of power, they should be your S tier.
Okay,
But
I
hold
don't
on.
think the Lizard Cult counters every faction. They counter the factions I like to play.
They counter every faction. I have made a
Yeah.
solid statement of every faction
Mhm.
except probably the Lords. No, again, because they don't care. Oh,
And the
you killed all my
Vagabond.
people with Lord of Hundreds. That's cool.
Yeah, the Vagabond doesn't care about the lizards as well.
Um, but if you have a sweet spot group where you can change your services for cards, riverboats, mercenaries,
Hmm.
um, and people actually are willing to trade with you, then yeah, the Riverfolk Company can be a force to be reckoned with.
Yeah.
So if you are in that perfect game, like for me, I'd actually probably put them up at A.
Hmm.
Like that's just how polar opposite. It's like, but the fact that they're the only faction that's like, boy, I hope my group wants to trade with me today so I can
Yeah.
play Root today.
It's one of those where you can still play, but you'll have a hard time getting past at those like you can get up to point 15 probably pretty easily, but it's those last 15 that's gonna be really hard for you.
Yeah.
So what you want to do is if nobody's trading with you, firstly, what you should be doing, you should be pouring all of your funds that's not going into moving and establishing trade boats is just drawing cards. What you want to be doing is you want to be getting this massive card of like 8 to 9 cards so you can whittle down to literally the best cards that you know everybody wants because then it's really hard for people to say no. And that's the thing.
Hmm.
Hey, everybody wants Root Tea. I have it. And if you don't buy it from me, I will craft it and get 2 points, you know? So what you
Yeah.
want is you want to be milling the deck as a Revolt. So that way you can try and close that gap. You
Oh
want to
wait,
grab all
by
the
milling the deck, you mean giving it to the lizard?
exactly. Yeah, you want to be influencing lost souls. You want to be taking the deck. You want to be going through the deck and getting all like the really good craftable cards, either for points or for abilities. So one, people are incentivized to buy them, but two, if they don't buy them, you get to craft them. Because once you start putting trade posts down, you're actually never going to lose the ability to craft from those points, which is great.
Right.
So it's like a threat. Either you give me all these craftable cards, or you buy them from me. And what you want to do, typically in a good Riverfall game, you're not going to be having people buying from you all the time. You want, even if you just get like 3 sales, that's good, man. Like what you want is just to have a couple times for somebody to be like, okay, surely if I put these 2 troops in their box, it's not going to be that bad, right? And then you're like, ho ho ho, and you're never going to give those back to them, and they're going
Yeah,
to be really mad.
exactly.
But like if you can just do that 2 to 3 times, and then you start milling the deck by just pumping all your funds into drawing cards, you're gonna be able to close that gap probably. And then what they have to do is they have to take out your audit ball, which is really hard for them to do, and nobody wants to spend the resources to do it.
Um,
I find them fun. I don't know.
I can think of a few factions that do that pretty easily.
Yeah.
I mean, the
I
Corvid
found
bomb, a well-placed Corvid bomb
yeah,
kills
that's true.
everything.
No, that's true. Or a revolt if you're not careful
A
enough. Yeah.
revolt, yeah. But
Um,
again, the Riverfolk are so not even player dependent,
yeah.
faction dependent too.
Yes, they're very faction dependent. Yeah. Like there's just
Um,
some that are just not gonna buy they're not gonna buy from you, right?
yeah, yeah.
But that's
So
why you
I've been stung by the Riverfolk before in that
mhm.
it's just like you can put all your services as cheap as possible, but people can just be like, nope, nope,
Well,
I don't care.
yeah. So what I do is what I found is people typically don't buy mercenaries ever from me.
Yeah, it is a shame
So
though, because the
I
people
put those down at 1 every time. I'm like,
yeah,
I don't
you would
care.
think people would go for mercenaries if they're warrior factions, but they probably have their own people
No,
that
yeah.
it's like, okay, well, I
You
don't need your
sell
help.
let's not beat around the bush. You're selling cards.
Yeah,
People maybe rarely go riverboats. I put riverboats at 1 because even if you just get one fun, you're not going to get a trade post from that, but that's fine.
yeah.
Like if you just get a couple 1 to 2 times where people want to use riverboats, it's great. And by the way, this is
Riverboats.
something you should be selling as well. Like even though I put it at 1, I always remind people when they say things like, "Oh, I want to get to this place." I always remind them, "Hey, you could just use the river,
You
right?"
got a little boat here?
Now the
Yeah.
problem is if you play the EMP deck, people can craft their own riverboat card, which is really
Hmm.
annoying. But if you don't have that,
Yeah.
you have the capital on riverboats, which is what you want.
I'm trying to remember because I know one map has a lake. Um, the fall map has the river, which is where that comes into play. I'm
Hmm.
trying to think of the other maps if the riverboats are effective.
Um, they are in the winter map because the river cuts through like the middle, and that map
That's
is so
right.
segmented that
That's
like
right.
people
Yeah,
want it.
that's
And
where
the
that
mountain map, that's the one I've played the least on. So
that one has barriers. I know that you
yeah,
have
it's
to
got the
break through.
tunnels.
I'd
Yeah,
have to look at them again. But yeah, your open hand, your for sale ability is yeah where cards are coming into play because that's where
yeah.
a lot of abilities where it's like oh to do this I have to have this specific
I
icon.
Yeah, I oscillate the hand card prices from 2 to 3. If I have a really good hand, I'll put it at 3 because like I can tell people want the cards. But probably I'll keep it at 2 because people have
Hmm.
to really really want the card to put 3 down. I'll never have it at 4. 4 is
Yeah.
egregious, right? Nobody's going to pay 4 for anything, no matter how good it is. So I keep those at 2, and I keep Riverboats and Mercenaries at 1. And if something's really good, I'll move it up to 3 for my hand.
Hmm.
But people rarely do. You have to have like a bang in hand to get your prices up to 3.
Yeah.
So, and you have to have multiple people that say things like, I want that card. And so then you have to like jack it up to like, but that's rarely going to happen. So,
Yeah.
what you want is, oh, if you can like occasionally sell riverboats, that's cool. A couple extra funds here and there. But like, if you just want to sell it, if you can just sell a card 2 to 3 times, that's pretty good. And then
Yeah.
you use your enemy's funds to draw and move
Hmm.
so that you're not spending them and giving them back.
Yeah, you almost kind of isolate another faction and just kind of buddy up with them. Just be a
Yeah.
like a shyster the entire time where it's like, hey, I know you're really wanting to fight. I
Hmm.
have like four recruits there. Because otherwise it's like, okay, there's like you're battling, I'm here. So you can either fight all of us or you can pay me 2 funds and add me to your thing so you don't have to deal
Hmm.
with me and this other faction. So you kind of just they're one of the sneakiest factions more so I think than the Woodland Alliance just because like just because that they're kind of like yeah okay sure I'll pay for that like what harm could it
Yeah.
do and then it's
That's what
like
you
then
want.
all of a sudden it's just like I'm sorry where'd these trade posts come from.
Yeah. Once people know the harm, they'll just start saying things like, we will never trade with them, right? Because
Yeah.
that's how you count them. So you have to break through. That's when they get hard. And you have to break through that. Okay, but trading with me once or twice isn't going to be that big of a deal. You want
Yeah.
to be whispering into there. You want to be that devil on the shoulder. Like, hey, just trade with me this one time.
Yeah.
It's not going to be a big deal. You can promise them to give their troops back, but you're never going to give them back. Let's be honest. You're not going to give
Right.
them back.
They're also
You,
the group that or the faction that I think gets metaed the hardest
mhm.
because you lie to your group once then
They'll never
every
trade.
game after that oh you're playing Riverfolk no
Yeah,
never
don't trust
trading.
him.
Yeah.
Yeah, guys, don't trust him. He's playing
Which
Riverfolk. Yeah.
I actively hate in games where
Hmm.
players do that. It's like, okay, then I'm just not gonna play. Yeah, we had a 4 player game of Root, but you're gonna meta and never let me play, so I just won't play.
Hmm.
It's like have fun with your 3 player subpar game of Root.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's why put them more at D in comparison to all the other ones.
Hmm.
But yeah, because I've played games of like Rising Sun and Blood Rage and Twilight Imperium where negotiation is heavy and it's awesome. Like the game sings,
Yeah.
and the Riverfolk have that in theory in my
Yeah.
experience.
I almost like it's interesting the whole troop thing. I don't know. I wonder if there's a different way to do the negotiation. I don't know. It's interesting. But the good thing is, if literally nobody trades with you, you will still get your own funds as a trickle in. So you're never out,
I
typically.
mean, you're there,
Yeah.
but you're not winning.
Hmm.
So I mean, which I mean for me, it's like you should like don't make winning everything that you care about, but if you're gonna play a competitive game, aim to win.
Yeah.
That's my whole mantra where it's like, if you don't win, don't throw a fit, don't be pissy. But if you're just be like, I don't really care, it's like, okay, well then you're just kind of destroying the spirit of the game.
Hmm.
It's competitive. Let's just play a cooperative game instead. Um, so yeah, like they're interesting. They're very unique, but I think I like all other 9 factions better.
Yeah. I mean, I totally understand why someone wouldn't vibe with them. I do. They just in the same way that the Underground Duchy just completely like just is like sandpaper to my brain. The Riverfolk just fits right. It just slots in. Like it just fits me so perfectly.
Hey, I mean that's why we're sitting here with your your list here.
Mhm.
Which is super funny that your number 1 is my number 10 and your number 10 is my number 1.
I love that. That's so much fun.
Um, so yeah. Well, that is all 10 Root factions ranked in this tier list. No news on the new expansions. I don't think, I mean, maybe they're focusing on arcs.
The Arcs is finished. I know Cole at least is working on an Oath expansion right now.
Interesting.
Which, by the way, the stuff he says about it sounds really cool. I'm
It's like,
super
hey, by the way,
excited.
guys, I'm making a new game. It's
Yeah.
Oath expansion that is better.
If if the Root expansion is happening, I don't know if Cole is going to be the one to lead the design on it. I think it'll be other people because he's working on Oath and Arcs right now. So yeah, it's interesting.
Hey everyone, thank you for watching, and I really hope that you enjoyed the video. If you would like to see more of my content, go ahead and click that subscribe button and the bell to be notified whenever I upload any new content. If you feel like supporting the channel, you can go ahead and click that Patreon link to be taken to my Patreon, and any help is truly appreciated. Other than that, stick around for any other run-throughs or reviews or cool top 10s or whatever I feel like putting on. Other than that, like, comment, share, and subscribe, and have a wonderful whatever time of day it is for you.